text it to me, okay? There's two laptops, mine and the school.
Okay, that's the one I have up there.
Okay.
Is everybody here?
Gang's all here.
Okay. Patrick, okay, we got all of us. All right, oh, it's 1:30, so let's start. Okay. Patrick.
Call.
Good afternoon. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the special school board meeting to approve the final budget amendment and the annual fiscal report. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the public comment segment of our meeting regarding the agenda item. Each speaker will state their full name, and you will have up to 3 minutes. A timer will appear on the screen. Please conclude promptly when the timer ends. The mic will automatically turn off when the timer reaches 0. Please address your comments to the board, not to the audience. Abusive language, personal attacks, and disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. Please direct any personal grievances or personal issues in writing to the school board office. Audience members are requested to listen quietly and respectfully. Outbursts, applause, and other interruptions that disrupt the meeting are not acceptable. Any person that interferes with the orderly process of this meeting after first being warned that such continued interference will result in removal from this board chamber. There are speakers in the room behind me that allow board members to hear public comments when stepping away from the dais. When your name is called, please approach the podium. If you choose to pass, you will forfeit your time to address the board. As a reminder, a recording cannot be played during your 3 minutes of public comment. We appreciate your cooperation. Let's begin with the first speaker. We have no speakers?
Good test run.
Wow, that was a good practice run. Okay, all right.
Well done.
Thank you.
They knew you meant business.
Yeah. Mr. Connor, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Ms. Marinelli. Today, this should be a short meeting, but it is a procedural event that we need to take care of prior to adopting our final budget for the year, which will happen at 5:01 on Tuesday, September the 16th. So today, we will have our CFO, Gabby Jarumchek, who will go over the final budget amendment as well as the financial report for fiscal year ending June 20th, 2025. Thank you.
Okay, well.
Okay, board chair, members of the board, Mr. Connor. Today we're presenting the final budget amendment for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. As a reminder, when the budget was adopted last September, it was based on projected revenues and expenditures. Over the course of the year, amendments are brought forward as necessary to reflect actual operations. The final amendment brings all funds into alignment with year-end results. For fiscal year 24-25, the general fund saw an increase of about $33 million in revenues, primarily from higher local property taxes, state grants such Florida School Recognition, interest earnings, and reimbursements for hurricane shelter operations. On the expenditure side, appropriations increased by about $18.5 million, largely due to negotiated salary increases for classified and instructional staff. Other funds were also adjusted. Highlights include capital transfers to support bus driver salaries and benefits, adjustments to the debt service funds for interest and principals paid, increases to food and nutrition services tied to federal and state reimbursements, revisions to grant funds to capture forward balances and new program awards. Importantly, The final budget amendment maintains compliance with both statutory and board mandated reserve requirements. The district's financial condition are reflected in the final budget as 11.6%, which is based on the assigned and unassigned fund balance compared to the final budgeted revenues. However, when we look at the actual year-end activity, the ratio is 12.5%. At this time, we're requesting board's approval for the final budget amendment for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025.
Thank you. May I have a motion for approval of the?
Yeah, I move that the Sarasota County School Board approve the final budget amendment for fiscal year ending ending June 30th, 2025.
Second.
Any comments from the board?
I have a question, actually. Last time we met, we had still not received the fourth calculation from the State Department of Education, and I was unable to find it online, but I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what that could look like for our upcoming budget, because we weren't able to reconcile it with our last year's budget.
At this time, that information has not been received from the state, so we had to proceed with closing the year with the Calc 3 report. Until we receive that information from the state, I really can't say how that's going to affect next year's budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
May I have a second, please? Oh, we second. May we have a vote on the motion? To do a voice vote. Voice vote, okay. We'll do a voice vote. Ms. Barker?
Yes.
Ms. Rose?
Yes.
Ms. Ziegler?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So the motion passes for the approval for the final budget amendment. Okay, but we'll move on for the approval of the annual financial report. Mr. Connor, anything?
I don't.
So we've presented at the very beginning at the top of this, so we're ready for a vote on it.
Okay. May I have a motion?
Yes, I move that the Sarasota County School Board approve the annual financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a voice vote. Mrs. Barker?
Yes.
Ms. Rose?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have approval of the annual financial report. Well, this concludes the the special meeting for our budget. So are there any additional comments from the board or? Okay, so we're done. Welcome to our workshop that is being held a little early since we finished up with the special session on the budget. So welcome, Mr. Connor.
Thanks, Ms. Marinelli. Today, during our work session, we're going to cover some important topics related to our school districts in different aspects. The first one being our benefits and our wellness update that is provided annually by our fantastic team over in Human Resources and Risk Management, as well as our state requirement to report out our state inspections and safety and security updates for Q1, which will be done by Mr. Jason Overbay. And then a very important discussion around facility utilization maximization for our district. And as we think forward related to how we maximize our resources as a district in order to protect our resources moving forward, have some time to talk about that as well today. So we're going to start with Ms. Lynn Peterson and Aaron Singerman from Risk Management to talk about our benefits and wellness update.
Good morning. Or good afternoon. I've said that sometimes. I'm going to say good afternoon because they're normally in the morning. But we're very excited to share an update with you today on our benefits as well as our wellness opportunities for this year and where we've come from. So we'll start with Erin Singerman. She's going to talk to us about the 5 dimensions of wellness.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having us here today. Oh, yeah, I did the same thing. Good afternoon. Our district's wellness philosophy is built on 5 interconnected dimensions that support both personal and professional well-being. These 5 dimensions were thoughtfully selected using national best standards and our own insights and data. Wellness programming is focused on these 5 dimensions, which include physical, financial, nutritional, emotional, and social well-being. Together, these 5 dimensions form a holistic approach to wellness while supporting district strategic plan pillars 3.1 and 3.2. When we nurture each one, we create a healthier and a more engaged workforce. Our wellness programming is also guided by data and real insights that help us focus on what matters most to employees and where we can have the biggest impact. Our recent staff survey that we sent out at the beginning of the school year had 737 responses, and we asked employees to look at those 5 dimensions and rank them, well, actually select their top priority, not rank. And they came in this order: physical, nutritional, emotional, financial, and then social well-being. The staff survey clearly identified physical wellness, especially exercise and preventive screenings, as their top priority area, underscoring the need for continued investment in preventive care and physical health initiatives. In 2024, cancer was the top diagnostic category by both prevalence and spend, followed by musculoskeletal and circulatory conditions. Our health assessment data shows that elevated BMI, poor nutrition, and high cholesterol are the top 3 risk factors for our population. And then shifting to mental health, anxiety, depression, and stress are the leading behavioral health concerns according to Florida Blue in 2024. And then looking at our EAP data, they confirm stress as well as family and relationship issues were their top clinical concerns. We have some outcomes we'd like to share with you this afternoon, highlighting programs that support the staff interests as well as medical claims and our high-cost claimants. For preventive health screening compliance, we continue to outperform industry benchmarks in all 5 of the preventive wellness areas, including male and female wellness, cervical, breast, and colonoscopy screenings. And for those last 3 preventive screenings, not only do we outperform the Florida Blue benchmark, but we outperform last year's compliance rate as well. We also have a few highlights, program highlights to share that are also tied to the plan. Jumping down to the mobile mammography program, since we're talking about screenings, Our on-site mammography screening program has been in place for about 5 or 6 years. Many of you have probably seen the bus. And we continue to go to all school sites every year. And last year, 609 women received their mammogram, and that continues to trend up every year. Well, last year, there were 4 critical findings identified. And this is important because when we catch cancer early through these screening programs, the employee often experiences less invasive treatment, better outcomes, and lower associated costs. An interesting fact is that this program boasts a 99% satisfaction rate, and 100% of the survey respondents say that it positively impacted their health and well-being. Last year, we were able to provide on-site biometric health screenings at 44% of the school sites, reaching another 667 staff. There were 3 critical values identified here, 1 for blood pressure and 2 for glucose. And those staff were connected with nurses for further chronic disease management. This is actually down from 12 critical values that were identified last year. In 2024, we launched a new STEP Challenge program that's been a huge hit with 741 participants and 460 million steps walked. And if you're curious what that looks like, that's going around the earth 9 times. In the fall of last year, we saw our largest participation at the October Health and Benefits Fair. This event was held literally days just after Hurricane Milton passed, and we were really on the fence about whether we were going to keep this event or not, and we decided to move forward with it, and we are so glad that we did, because the feedback that we got from staff at the event was that they loved the opportunity to feel connected with their school community and the businesses that wanted to support them after such a traumatic event. Board-hired employees have access to Calm. At the end of the school year, there were 1,230 users with a 73% engagement rate. If you're not familiar with Calm provides guided meditations, breathing exercises, sleep stories, all the stuff to help with stress management, mindfulness, and mental health. And then last but not least, thanks to the Bransick Foundation, we've expanded our on-site well-being spaces, or Zen-Dens, as we like to call them, to Tuttle, Glen Allen, Alta Vista, and most recently, Oak Park. These spaces were designed to create a spot at school where staff can go and reset and recharge during the school day. And as you can see, prox utilization is very high, and 93% report improved well-being. We get a lot of quotes and feedback from staff, and this one I'm going to share sums it up quite nicely. I'm able to take a quick break to de-stress, breathe, and put the day into perspective. Sometimes we need to be reminded that self-care is critical in order to be effective, and that pretty much sums up those spaces quite nicely. And then last, after each activity, we encourage staff feedback and we send out a survey across all programs. We have a 95% satisfaction rate, and over the past 2 years, 120% increase in district-sponsored engagements since we have begun tracking. We've developed a variety of wellness programs, and each one is thoughtfully designed to support the 5 dimensions and our data and our medical plan. I'm not going to go through each one of these here, but we wanted to just give you a visual of the broad, diverse offerings that are available to employees.
As you have heard, we have made a lot of efforts over the past year to really be strategic and thoughtful, not just with aligning to national or Florida Blue benchmark data, but the feedback from our employees as well. And our communication on those things is no different. So we have this year worked to streamline some of that promotion of our wellness and benefits programs, including weekly communication to employees via our standard methods of communication, the SWN and the AWN. As we all know, wellness changes are not made on a monthly basis. They're made in day-to-day habits. So the weekly communication to have the information handy and front and center for employees is really what drives those change behaviors and patterns. So we have created this in partnership with alongside some of our partners to share this information with employees on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Now we're going to switch over to the medical plan and get into some numbers and information. So next slide. So the district issued an ITN for medical and pharmacy broker consultant services in February. This ITN produced 8 proposals. And after the panel evaluated the proposals and the presentations, Gallagher Benefit Services was selected and awarded a 5-year contract with 2 one-year renewals. The Gallagher team on our account lead is Josh Rubik, Kelly Davis, and Marissa Chapkanoff. Unfortunately, they could not be here because they're in New York on a previous commitment, a very large meeting. And so they have sent their colleagues. It is Grant Podsobinski. He's from the market leader for Tampa market. And Ed Scott is their actuary. They're here today in case there are any questions, and that if I cannot answer, they can answer and follow up if you have anything for them. So we're excited to start this new relationship and extension of our team. So the current state of the health insurance market, it's probably no surprise as you're seeing increases everywhere in all markets. The national medical trend is no different. For 2026, medical trend is expected to see its largest increase in a decade. In past years, medical trend was between 4% and 6%. But for 2026, the consensus among national consulting firms is between 8 and 8.5%. 2026, the marketplace they're going to see an increase of over 20% in plans. And inflation and pharmacy, specifically specialty drugs, are what's really driving higher healthcare costs. Specialty drugs are high-cost drugs for complex, chronic, or rare conditions such as cancer, MS, rheumatoid arthritis. These drugs may require special handling by a healthcare professional or storage or even a doctor administering. They're the biologics, the target therapies, and the gene therapies. And some of the drug names you might recognize from a lot of your watching of whatever advertisements you might see, such as Skyrizi, Otezla, Concentrix, and Tremfya. Those names are all within our plan, and the cost for those 4 drugs range from $4,000 per script to over $20,000 per script. So, and that's not, there's more. There are others that can go as high as a couple $1 million or so. These are the new gene therapy drugs. They're actually to be more curative, where they can cure. There's one that may cure blindness, but it is over 7 figures. We haven't seen that on ours, and we do have stop loss that includes those. So thankfully, we do have that stop loss at $750,000. But that is what's happening in the specialty pharmacy. It's the drugs are just getting so expensive. GLP-1s are also driving the cost. These are the drugs that treat diabetes and weight loss. You've probably also heard these names, such as Ozempic and Mounjaro, Wegovy, and Zepbound. The Ozempic and the Mounjaro treat diabetes, and the Zepbound and both are driving costs for plans, and we do cover those within our plans. About 36% of employers cover both GLP-1s for the diabetes and the weight loss. 55% of employers cover the GLP-1s for just the diabetes and not weight loss. So it's not much different here in Sarasota for Sarasota County Schools medical plan. When you see our numbers from January through June, we are not much different than what's happening nationally. looking at this, and I know it's very hard to see, but on the very most right, that is our 2025 data from January through June. And the best way to compare it is to per employee per month, and you can see that at the bottom right of each column for each year. And in comparison of 2024 to 2025, and we compare those numbers, for year to date, we're up 22% from 2024, 22.32 to be exact. And then when you compare going over to the full calendar year, we are up 6.8%, and we still have 6 months to go. So that's just showing you that we are seeing exactly what's out in the market. I spoke about the GLP-1s just a second ago on the previous slide, and GLP-1s represent 25% of our pharmacy spend. From January to June, we've spent $3.2 million. 13% or 1.6 was for diabetes, and 12% or 1.5 million, and these are rounded numbers, are for weight loss. Specialty drugs are also a concern for us, obviously. The national, most plans spend about 50% of their pharmacy spend on specialty. We are below that, thankfully, right now, but we're close. We're at 43% or $12 million. Okay, next slide. So when Gallagher came on board, we put them to work. They have a lot of work to do. We needed our projections for 2026. They came to work on June 1st, and they hit the ground running, got us our projections with no changes to our plans. And you can see from this slide, after running all the numbers, the projections are that it would be about a $10 million increase, or 13.5% for our medical plan. This is really unsustainable. I mean, we have seen the last 2 years, we saw in 24, we saw a 19% increase. In 25, we saw a 9.7% increase. And this year, looking at that 13.5, it's not sustainable. So although we have implemented a lot of programs over the years, it's just not enough. So there needs to be some more drastic changes to our plan. So with that, we've tasked Gallagher to show us what we could do. Give us a list. They've provided us a long list of options, including plan design changes, and because the time frame being right before, just prior to open enrollment in October and before the new year, there's some things you can't do. We knew we have some things we need to do. They take longer. But what could we do right now to help with the budget? So with that, we knew that if there's any plan design changes, we were going to have to talk to SCTA, because these plan designs, our deductibles, our co-pays, those are all within our bargaining. They're written in. So there's nothing changing. We cannot change those without having a conversation and coming to an agreement with them. So we did that. We were able to select a list that we thought was agreeable and went to SCTA. We went through the list, and this is what we came up with that they've agreed to. So we have 4 plans. We're going to go down to 3. Our 2 HMOs are so very similar, and the high HMO really, with a $250 deductible, is really not what is in the market. More in line is what's on the low HMOs. So we decided to combine, actually move up, get rid of that high HMO and just utilize that low HMO and call it the HMO. We didn't change the deductible on that HMO, which is $500 per person or $1,500 per family. And then the maximum out-of-pocket is where the adjustment was made. As you can see, the 3 columns to the right in the red are the changes that were made to those plans. So the 3 plans that were agreed to were the HMO, the low PPO, and the high HMO. So the HMO, the changes to that, like I said, was the maximum out-of-pocket, and then the low HMO and the high PPO also had changes to their deductibles and their maximum out-of-pockets. They're all in red. And then we did a couple other changes to get all the plans a little more in line, such as the emergency room for the low PPO was a $50 copay, so we put that in line at $150. And then moving down, the high PPO was the ambulatory surgical center. That was $100. We moved that to $3. And then for mental health was $0, and moved those to mirror our primary care. Primary care has a copay, so we mirrored that with the mental health. These changes, we also, I apologize, also want to mention that we removed a program, the weight loss, the GLP-1s for weight loss, keeping the GLP-1s for diabetes, and removal of Healthcare Blue Book, the Prevention Pays program under wellness, and then we implemented a 30-day wait period for eligibility to enroll in benefits for new hires. So those changes, all in total, were $4.7 million savings. With that information and all of those changes, we can go to this slide, which shows the fiscal year on the left and the calendar year on the right. As you can see on the actuals and the tentative budget for 2026 all shows the fiscal year. As you look at the operating loss on the bottom, each one of those years is showing that we are operating at a loss for the medical plan. So, which is exactly what we're saying is we're increasing. We're not keeping up with, our premiums are not keeping up with our expenses. So moving over, since the plans run on a calendar year, if you look over to the right side, you'll see we're 2025 is predicted to have a loss, so we're now in September. So by the end of this year, we need to raise those premiums in order to cover all of the expenses. And so for 2026, with the projections of medical trend and everything that Gallagher looked at, it was an 8.5% increase, or $6.8 million to be able to break even and have a no loss there. So with that, we will be putting forward an 8.5% increase in premiums in order to meet this. The next slide shows, since we're self-insured, we have to provide the state that we are able to cover our 60 days worth of claims. And this slide does reflect that our 60-day reserve requirement is met with reserves remaining balance.
So one of the things that Len had mentioned was the plan design changes. On this slide, we wanted to show you our rate history and what this has looked like over time for Sarasota County Schools. So our history shows that our last plan design changes were put into place 13 years ago in 2012. So that's typically something you're going to look at annually. It doesn't mean that you're going to make a change annually, but it's something that you look at to make sure that it is on pace with market data and you are in alignment. So that's a significant amount of time to have maintained the same plan design structure. From there, we moved to a self-insured plan in 2016. And as you see, there really weren't a significant amount of rate changes. They were really minimal and nominal rate changes from that time until about 22 and 23, where you start to see that creep up. Over the course of the last 3 years, including the 8.5% increase this year, we have had an increase of 37.5% in our rates. So that is a very significant rate. So when Lynn shares with us that that's untenable, that's a very real graphic to show you that what that looks like year over year. That would have even been greater had we not made the plan design changes this year to bring us down to an 8.5% increase instead of the 13.5% projected increase.
Okay, this slide is just showing the benefit renewal rates. So medical, as we just said, 8.5. Our dental will also have a slight increase. That is much less than our medical. We only spend a couple $1 million on dental, so not as hard a hit, but it is going to go up by 5.8%. No changes to the other core benefits. The retiree life and the voluntary life, which are employee and retiree paid, those will increase. They have a 30% increase, which sounds like a lot, but those are smaller dollar figures than what you look at when you see a medical. And as we make these changes and look to the future, Florida Blue has been partnering with National Alliance for over 20 years. And this is a platform that they use with National Alliance for their large private sector self-insured clients. And recently, they have offered this to their public sector. So this is a nice offering for us. It's going to give us an extended, enhanced platform for us to be able to utilize. And it will give us more flexibility with our plans and our programs that we want to implement in the future. It'll still be Florida Blue, but the platform that we're going to utilize for them evaluating claims and all of that will be on the National Alliance platform. Very little change for members, and members were going to get ID cards. All members were going to get new ID cards anyway with all of these plan design changes. So they're going to get new cards. This was a good opportunity at this point in time to make this change. And then they'll see a new platform, a new portal for their claims. So they'll just have to go on there for any claims after 2026. They'll go on the new platform, and then anything before, they'll go on the Florida Blue Legacy platform. Same for the employer. For us, we're going to have more robust reporting, more on-time reporting that we'll be able to obtain ourselves versus requesting reports and waiting for an ad hoc report to come in. We're going to have access to a system that we're going to be able to pull reports right away in real time. And then we'll have an extended team with the National Alliance team, and we will we'll be getting additional dollars. We're going to get a little reduction in our per employee per month charge for this service. We currently pay Florida Blue for administering the claims. We're getting a reduction there. You'll be seeing that in on the September 16th board for review by you. And then we're going to get $200,000 versus our $160,000 of wellness dollars when we go over there to them. And we will get, upon signing the contract, a one-time $200,000 for wellness, and then $25,000 for a data platform warehousing. So it'll work out well for us.
Okay, so we've talked about all of the changes. So the next step to implement those is open enrollment. Open enrollment is the one time a year where our employees have the opportunity to change their plans and to make different elections. So our dates for open enrollment this year are October 10th through November 3rd. The HR team will be providing support to employees to help them enroll in these. And there are multiple methods where employees can look at this, because obviously anytime you have a plan design change, any significant changes, employees want to ask questions, and you want to be sure that you have resources available to answer those questions. So employees can always call, they can email. They do have functionality within the benefit platform to ask questions, to evaluate plans and compare those within the platform. Additionally, we will have 7 different on-site visits during this open enrollment window at different locations throughout the district, where employees can stop by and visit and ask questions of the benefits team about their enrollment, in addition to our annual benefits and wellness fair, where we will be present to help them enroll, as well as vendors will be present to help answer any questions that they may have regarding the changes or their specific situations.
So, we said earlier, we cannot sustain double-digit increases going forward, and we're looking at everything, beginning with our pharmacy plan. So Express Scripts is our current pharmacy benefit manager, and they have extended their contract with us for 1 more year through 26. So we need to go out for RFP in 26 for the 27 plan year. So that will be released, and then we will be looking at everything. There are 3 major PBMs in the market. They hold 80% of the business. But there are a lot of smaller entities coming into play that are helping with the issues of all of the specialty pharmacy. And so we are going to be looking at everything. It might be a little bit of a change for us, but we may see some great opportunity for cost savings. Life and disability will also be going out for RFP. Those contracts are up. And we're going to continue to explore other strategies to reduce costs, such as the direct primary care. We might want to bundle that with like an on-site clinic model where you pay, you get a contract with a facility, and you're not shuffling people through in 15 minutes. They might go back to the days of when you sat with your doctor for 45 minutes. Now you're in there for 10 minutes. These models allow for better service and better costs, so you streamline. So we're looking at that. Reference-based pricing, that is Medicare Plus. So, you look at doctors that take Medicare and you direct contract with them and say, hey, we'll do this plus 30, 40%. So there's that option. There's direct contracting, and we also want to look at expanding what we have. We've started this with Lantern. If you recall, you've approved Lantern. That is a separate network they bundle services. And with the bundle, we save between 25 and 50% for certain elective surgical procedures. And we've had great success with that. Well, they've expanded. So we'd like to look at what their offerings are and how we can steer care to more economical places with good outcomes. And then, there may be additional plan design changes that we may have to look at. So we'll continue to look at that.
So that concludes our benefits and wellness presentation. We would like to offer the opportunity for any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have, okay, Ms. Ziegler?
Thank you very much. Thank you. All of you do a lot of work. I think I want to always commend Ms. Singerman. You do such a great job, because there's so much of this is driving behavior, and it's not easy. So, and I've seen over the years so much of that work that's been done. So I don't, that's a ton to you. And I think that when we look at some of these numbers, and when we went to self-insured, I think it was mentioned, the double-digit increases in the last 3 years are unsustainable 100%. So I think it was 38.5% we're looking at from a premium increase over the last 3 years, if my math is correct. What are the comparables? Now, I know the census or the population, when you're dealing with self-insured, is hard to compare when we look at other people, but we should have some comparable data when we look at, and this may be directed to the gentleman in the room, when we look at other size and census similar, meaning age and so I'm talking insurance, but like census similar, meaning the people who are encompass, who are under our insurance, age, disability, et cetera. So what are their increases looking like when they're self-insured? Because I don't have any. I have no compass. I have no comparable to look at that. And it took a lot, but in an industry and organization our size, it made a lot of sense to go to be self-insured. And so I don't really keep a track on what, traditional risk sharing, if we just go out to market and get insurance, what our premiums are looking like for a organization our size. I do know we talked about the contract when it comes to the CTA and the collective bargaining agreement that has our hands tied. I think, again, we talk about this a lot when we go to negotiate, that it is extraordinary that we pay 100%. I can tell you I serve on a different board, the Central Florida Tourism Oversight Board, and it is not the case. And it's always kind of negotiated and discussed about what percentage you're going to be discussing. So all those wrapped up, I go back to, it's not sustainable. A lot of it's come down to the prescription drugs are killing us. I know that there's been action taken on that, and I appreciate that. And I also think there's a lot of preventative behavior that I think we are top notch in that space when I look at other industries, any organizations, private or public. But from a mathematical and from a business standpoint, what are we comparing ourselves to when we look at self-insured, and what are their premiums looking like? Is it the same? Are we an outlier? Are we below?
So, well, we currently are above with our plans.
Above
Our
being-
plans are if we compare ourselves to other school districts, most other school districts, our current plans have an 87 to 92% actuarial rate value. Most other districts don't have in the 90s. Their free plan, is typically in the 80s, sometimes 70s. So that means if the plan pays, if we're a 90% actuarial value, the plan pays 90% of the claim and the employee pays 10%. So that's what that means. That's where all of the deductibles and copays come into play. We also are above, and we're an excellent district, want to offer excellent benefits. We're one of a few districts that offer all benefits for free.
Say that again.
For free.
One more time, just really clearly in the mic. No, I think it's really important because it was kind of, say it one more time.
We are one of a few districts in the state that offer all 5 core benefits for free.
For free. For our employees.
For our employees,
Okay.
correct. So our employees, right now as it stands, get choices of any medical plan for free. Now it'll be 3 plans for free. Most districts only have 1 free plan, and everything else is a buy-up. So that's where we compare. But it's really apples and oranges a lot, because from in the insurance world, your plan designs can be completely different. Every school district has a completely different, HMO, PPO, or a high deductible plan, or HSA. They're not all the same. They're all different. But a lot of them do have HMOs and PPOs. And so, because typically public entity does. But they may have higher deductibles, or they may have to do more to be able to get a lower deductible. So there's things they may have to, every school district does something different.
And the reason, thank you for that, because I know it was a loaded question, but in reality, because you look at these numbers, and anyone who's on our plan that feels that pinch, double digit, the 19% increase was really tough for anyone to swallow. And I don't think, and even from our staff, that's coming out, it's automatically deducted, but they're feeling that, right?
Well, but they're not all feeling it.
Well, that's true.
Because 80% of our employees are on employee-only tier. Only 20% of our employees put dependents on. So there's about 1,000 employees that have a dependent or 2 or 3 on the plan.
Okay.
So really the board is feeling majority of the hit.
Well,
I'm just saying, the employees are feeling it, and it's hard on our plans because they're so rich. It's hard to carry dependents.
Yes.
It can be expensive. But we do have one plan, the low PPO, that offers a board subsidy. The board actually is off of the HMO. So if you have a spouse or children, the premium is the credit you get on the dependent tier is from that HMO, so it's higher. Right now, it's like $200, and when we move forward to 2026, it'll be like $200 credit for dependent care, dependent coverages on that low PPO.
Okay, fair point. I think generally I go into just a comparison from a financial standpoint, and because of all the nuances, and the unsustainability of it, if we continue in these high level increases, that's what I'm looking at. What do other districts experience? Are they looking at 10%, 12%, 15%? But again,
They're all seeing these increases.
Okay.
I just was at a conference just a few months ago, and we're constantly all emailing each other. We're all scrambling. Everybody's scrambling.
well, I want to make sure they were feeling our pain. I get
Only one district wasn't. I won't say the name, but they were like feeling pretty good.
Was there anything that they were doing that we can take away from that?
They're different. They're different. They have different makeup. It's just different. I can talk to you later on that. I
Appreciate it. And I started the way I did because I can get into insurance jargon. And by the way, property and casualty insurance and health benefits, totally two different things. So I don't pretend to know that I'm an expert in that space. But from a premium standpoint and the actuarial data, et cetera, I feel comfortable with it. And seeing this year over year, I just want to make sure, one, that it's clear how much we do really put forward from a benefit standpoint to our employees and how much we take that seriously. And so I don't want it to be misunderstood. I'm not looking to take that away. But from a financial business decision standpoint, evaluating what can be done. And again, my hat's off on the pre-loss side of it, because that really is the things that make a difference. And I think the data that was presented in the advance and year over year has really made a difference. So thank you very much for all of your work.
Any other board member comments? Mr. Edwards?
As always, you do a magnificent job of robbing Peter to pay Paul and slice and dice to get it to the presentation that we saw today. I think the place where we talk about this every year, I'm a bit concerned about and the costs of the weight loss drugs and the diabetes drugs are through the roof. I've been spending a lot of time just reading about it for the last year because I could see our projections and we're paying close attention. I think the part that I'm most concerned about is that we removed some of those drugs and the ability to acquire them. I'm wondering if there's some middle ground that I know that the premiums are not sustainable, but the complete removal of it was something that I had asked Mr. Connor to look into, and I'm throwing back out. Even if it's a 50% cost to the employee, I just feel that pulling the rug out from underneath of them and the other connection that we talk about a little bit is they're in high stress jobs. I mean, we talk about time and when it's high stress, some people do find comfort in food, and that's not always the best solution, but and Aaron does a great job of trying to balance all of that information. So all I'm suggesting is perhaps just one additional, is there a way that without having to pay the full boat on those, is there some other alternative?
Well, I'm at the direction of my superiors and what things cost. So if it's, I don't know how to answer that question. Well, because you can do anything you want. We are self-insured, so we can do anything we want. It's just those costs are going to continue to rise. So you can offset it with a 50% if you want, but you're still paying 50%.
So again, if we are warning folks that you may want to start paying more attention to what Aaron's talking about instead of the drugs. We're giving a little notice here. So that
We'll get notice.
so all I'm asking is, before we just ink it, can we look at what a parachute might look like to give people a transition time? That's all I'm asking.
And the plan, Mr. Edwards, they will have some transition time once any decisions are approved. They will receive, the employees would receive notice about what that would look like as well. But we can certainly look at the options.
Any other comments? I would just like, well, first of all, thank you very much. I know that this is not an easy area, talking about benefits and reductions and everything, so I appreciate all the work that you've done. But I'd like to follow up a little bit with Mr. Edwards. As being a former educator, I do know the stress, and I love food. That's my, so I can appreciate where our employees, they like the benefit of having the drugs to be able to help, because it is something that not everybody can do what Aaron recommends. So, and if it's not 50%, just something. But I have to also acknowledge what you're telling us, that this is a cliff. So I think if you guys could just do, if it was 25%, so people could really see if we had how much it still is going to set us back. Because I think the more information, besides just saying it's 7.4 million, they don't really always understand that. So I know that's putting some work on you. I'll have to ask the superintendent if that would be something. But so we can get that information out for our staff. Because, you know, the short time I've been on the board, I've always said I don't want to really cut our benefits, because that's something that has always been offered, that we pay for it. And I'd like to think that's a draw. I know sometimes young people don't think about that, but as they get older, that is a draw. So anything that we do, and I'm not pushing it, because I understand that it is a cliff, because we certainly have to increase to pay for all the commercials of these wonderful drugs that we see over and over on the channel. So I'm being snarky, but we do know that that costs a lot of money. So anything that we can do, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Marinelli, we could certainly look at that. Those shots are about $1,300 per shot. So even if you looked at 25% or 50%,
Per
it would
month.
be, yeah, it would be for many of our employees probably untenable still.
Right. And also, and like I said, I was at my conference and speaking to my counterparts in other school districts. None of them, only one other, and they're getting rid of it, cover weight loss. So it's unusual. We're like I said, there are only 30-some% actually cover weight loss out of private and public sector. So most people they're being asked to, but they're feeling the pain just like we are. They're being asked, but it costs a lot of money. So, and there are other options, you know. So, but it's difficult. I know. I understand. But that, just wanted to give you that little bit of information of where we stand.
Well, thank you, because I think the more information that we can share, people understand, because it is becoming unattainable. So thank you. Anything further before we move on to safety and security updates? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms.
I just had a thought listening to all this. Would it be possible for us to partner with, say, like one of those online private health company, like I'm thinking of like a Noom or a HERS, similar to the Calm app, and give our employees some sort of, even just like a 30% discount on a membership to Noom, or because a lot of those places now are offering the GLP-1s as a part of their package that you can opt into. And I wonder if that might be a way for employees to help move from it being fully covered to, and most of these, plans also help you with exercise and diet and all that, of course. So, I don't know, just a thought.
Well, we do have OMADA that is free to all of our members who are on the benefit plan, on the medical. And if they want to enroll in that and they need to lose weight, they can enroll in that. And it's a platform where you get a scale and they monitor, they have coaching, you can log your food and you can get meal ideas and things like that. So we offer that for free under our pharmacy plan. So that is an option that we already have in place.
But the GLP-1s are not available for private purchase on there, correct?
No, because that is utilized to monitor the GLP-1s, that we
Right.
did put that program in place to at least vet the people who did need them and also monitor that they are engaging in that OMADA app, so that they're staying on course.
Right.
Right. The Nooms of the world and Weight Watchers and stuff, they're offering cheaper because they do a compounding and we don't do compounding. That's not the official FDA approved
Got it.
drug.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you again very much. And now we'll go to safety and security updates. Mr. Connor?
Thank you. If you don't mind, we'll give maybe 2 minutes to transition.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You are smiling entirely too much, Mr. Enos.
There's no reason why, no reason why.
So it's nice to see you on the other side of the dais.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move into our second item, which is safety and security updates. This is part of our regular report to the board, as we do quarterly, related to our state inspections, as well as some other updates as well. So I'll turn it over to Chief Enos and Mr. Jason Overbay.
Thank you, Superintendent Connor, School Board. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. Basically, with the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act, there's lots of different things that have to be done. This is one of the statutory pieces. So even though it says it's a quarter one report actually is a recap of what is for last year. So what we're going to do is do the recap over for last year. We'll just have any questions you might have as we begin this year. We're still looking forward to make sure, obviously, is that we'll be in 100% compliance. That we'll continue to do everything we can in order to keep schools safe, especially our students and our teachers, and to continue with what I hope will be the excellence which I will expect as we continue to move forward. So when we look at this is just a statutorily requirement, so it shouldn't take too long. It's just basically we have mandated in reference to what the statute says, and then we'll be back again in order then to talk about as the approval of the board in reference to all the Florida Safe School assessments and the rest of the information that we have to provide to the school board by, I believe it's October 10th, 1st? November, close. So we'll be coming back in order to do that. So I'll turn this over to Jason Overbay. He is the school safety specialist, and as being the school safety specialist, he is the statutory reporter.
Good afternoon. We're very happy to be here today and excited about this presentation. We do have 4 types of compliance visits that go on each year. We have the Safe School Officer visits, which have been occurring inside Sarasota this year. There is no requirement for reporting them. A compliance officer from the state goes on campus to check to make sure there's a safe school officer on campus, and then they leave. They'll hit 5 or 6 schools in one day. Sarasota County is 100% compliant with all safe school officers across all of our schools. We have what Florida School Safety Compliance Inspection. Those are the visits that are unannounced from the state where they come in. They have about 150 different things that they look at when they come and visit. We have done our best to prepare for those visits, and those are what we'll talk about today. We also have the district school safety compliance inspections, or those are also unannounced that I'm required to do. Unlike the state that only has to do each school once every 3 years, we have to visit the schools every year and do those same 150-point inspections. And then we have re-inspections for schools that maybe did not pass all of their different inspections. So this past school year, we had 23 schools inspected. They were a good combination of charter and traditional public schools. Quarter one, we had no schools inspected. Quarter two, we had 4. Quarter three, they visited 14 schools. In quarter four, they visited 5. Our main violations were assessor certificates were not available at the time. We had some trouble with the transition from the state of Florida. They went to a new website, and we had some trouble pulling the assessor certificates out. So we weren't able to provide assessor certificate when asked. We also had some difficulty with providing threat management certificates, and drill paperwork was not filled out the way that the state had requested. That was a rule change that came through, if I remember correctly, November, December of last school year. So obviously we weren't up to what the requirements were in August, September, October. We had 2 schools that had open and unlocked classroom doors, which were our violations. And we had 1 school that had a back gate that was left open and unlocked. However, they could not make entry into the school because the back gate only led to a service area. That completes our year-end review of our inspections. We really want to thank you all for all that you do for us in school safety. I want to thank all of our team and all the hard work that they did this past year. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
I don't see any board member comments. That was the fastest presentation of a workshop in almost 3 years, so thank you. I am glad you brought up about the schools almost in compliance of making sure all the doors are locked and the gates. I know when I've been to a school and been to a couple of football games, we have to wait to be escorted out because it's locked down. So you can feel, the public can feel, parents feel reassured for the most part that the schools are doing everything they can to keep their children safe. So thank you.
You're welcome. And with the legislative changes, we will always make sure that we stay on top of it, because obviously, as everybody knows, this is my 100% commitment. It's always been a school safety, and we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that we lead, as we always have in this field. And at the next time, we'll hopefully be able to give you a more robust report, especially in regard to the police department, as well as in regard to safety and security as we move forward to the school year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will move to number 3, exploring facilities utilization. Superintendent Connor.
Thank you, ma'am, and good afternoon, everyone. This is a really important conversation we're about to dive into. So I thank you for allowing me to have this discussion today. You know, education is at a crossroads. And when you think about a lot of the legislation, specifically the Schools of Hope, the expanding FES scholarships, we are seeing a reshaping of public education, especially here in Florida. And so today's conversation is really going to be about what do we need to do as a district to protect our resources, to protect our traditional public schools, to be the premier provider of education for this county. And so this is a sensitive topic when you're talking about utilization of your facilities, where you currently stand with student enrollments, with all the shifts, the effect that we're seeing in terms of programming and the school choice landscape. So I want to just first reiterate that it is not lost on the team who has been working diligently around this as we look to act. We can't sit around and do nothing and think that things will just become rosy and better for us. But we have to get into a posture of being proactive about the resources that our taxpayers have entrusted to us as stewards. And so that's what today's conversation is going to be about. So I'm going to walk you through why we need to take some bold steps when it comes to reimagining our programs, when we talk about how we utilize our facilities, when we talk about the partnerships that we have engaged in with some great organizations and some potential partnerships that are ahead of us. And really the goal is around staying competitive. We have to come into a mindset that we cannot continue to do the same things and expect different results, or that things will move in our direction. We have to act. And that is the purpose of the goals that you see in front of you here. So what do we got to do first? We have to look at our capacity. We have to review each and every one of our facilities and look at how we are using or should repurpose some of those spaces that may be currently underutilized in our school district. That comes with identifying schools that may need some new innovative programs. What partnerships can we leverage with outside organizations to attract our families? How do we maximize the student stations and utilization at every one of our schools and our facilities? This really isn't an option for us. We have to be innovative as we look forward. It is our advantage to safeguard our schools and our resources by doing these things as we move forward into the school year. We all know that families are looking for different options. The school choice landscape is exploding. We are seeing instructional programming expand. We have seen charter schools who are offering very niche programmings such as dual language, military academies, STEM, Montessori, classical education. And we have to look within to see, are we offering that competitive advantage for our families? And if we don't provide them, these other providers will. And so that's going to be an important distinction as we look ahead. So as we look at each of our campuses, and we look to protect the seats and to grow the programs to attract the family that we want to serve in our community, we have to do a few things. First is we have to identify what are the locations within our existing facilities that are prime for new innovative advancements. So basically we need to map out what are the best fit schools for things like early college, for dual and language, for junior achievement 3DE. When we talk about the loss of students from our traditional public schools into charter schools, we see that at very distinct points within the K-12 spectrum, specifically middle school. So what do we need to do to reimagine the way that we provide that experience for our families so that they feel that their needs are being met? All of those things are a part of the planning process as we look to preserve and fulfill that need of education for our families in Sarasota County. So the goal really is, where do we place high interest programs? Where, why, and will they fill the seats and lift enrollment across our district? We've been seeing a flattening of enrollment for several years. Even with continued growth in this county, we haven't necessarily seen that translate into increased growth in our traditional public schools. With the expansion of the FES scholarship, we're going to see that continuing probably over the next few years, continue to have an impact on our overall student enrollment. So another thing we have to look at is, while we're looking at locations for innovative programs, what about other partnerships that we can expand upon in our facilities? One of the things we're doing currently right now is we're really partnering strong with junior achievement. At the high school level specifically, we're looking at launching 2 programs next year called 3DE, which is a workforce-based competency interdisciplinary program that students will experience at the high school level that engages with Fortune 500 companies, local companies, and it really gives them the competencies they need to translate right into the workforce and be highly productive. So as we launch a new school next year, Welland Park High School, that is a prime opportunity for a program like Junior Achievement 3DE. When we look at schools and the makeup of the schools, like take a Riverview, for example, who does an outstanding job with International Baccalaureate program and serves a great deal of number of students in that program. But also there is a great need to serve students who are not in that program. Could 3DE be that possibility there? So those are the types of discussions that we're having. So innovative programs like Montessori, dual language, classical education, STEM, artificial intelligence, and then partnerships with organizations like JA. We need to even think about utilization of our facilities beyond just the academic programs. We know that as the premier educational provider, we have to have top talent. We talked about it today with the very robust medical plan we provide our district, which is an awesome benefit to our employees. We offer the second highest starting salary in the state of Florida currently. That is a great benefit. That's a great way to attract people and to retain people by recognizing the hard work they do. But there's even more incentives that I think we need to look at as we look at our space and facilities and being strategic. Childcare is a huge issue in our county right now. And if we can partner with someone that is an expert in that field, because honestly, we're experts at K-12, we're not experts at the childcare. We find these partners where they can leverage some of our facilities to provide a benefit to our employees, maybe reduce cost of childcare. So it's looking at all of these types of things and really maximizing the utilization of our facilities. As we've done the analysis, and we'll go through some of that data, there is a great need for us to act. We have facilities that are under 50% utilization within our district. And I'm going to tell you in a moment why that truly is a concern. So the last part of this is as we look at the utilization of our facilities and our learning environments and identify the prime opportunities for program advancement, for partnerships, and how to repurpose some of the student stations so that we protect our schools and our facilities, that's going to be an important step moving forward. Bottom line, we have to push our facility usage, our student stations, as high as we can so that we don't leave them open for others to potentially take over. So why are we moving this way? Well, really, a lot of this conversation, we've talked a lot in recent months about fiscal responsibility. We opened up a brand new school this year, a K, beautiful facility, Sky Ranch, offering some great programming, going to meet the needs of the community. But the fact is, it costs a lot of money. And to operate a school like a K like that costs, operationally $8 million a year. You talk about utilities and staffing and food, nutrition, and transportation. Next year, we're opening up a brand new, beautiful high school, Welland Park High. Again, when you talk about operational cost of $10 million, that is not all being offset by new enrollment. So it requires us to think, okay, if we're going to be fiscally responsible, we have to take a look at our other facilities as well and make sure that we're getting the max use out of that. Why are we moving forward with looking at this and having this discussion? It ties directly to our strategic plan. We want to be the provider that meets the needs of as most families as possible, as many families as we can have under our umbrella. That's our goal, because we do think that we have the talent, the resources, and the investment that really provides a high quality education. And if you look throughout our strategic plan, those initiatives are very clear of how we achieve that. Schools of Hope legislation. We're going to get a little bit into that, but that is definitely impetus for us to have have some urgency around this conversation today. And then, of course, the shifts in enrollment. We're seeing changes. We obviously know that as a school district expands and grows, and housing development and the urban sprawl that happens, that some communities and some parts of town may age out, and then some will be bustling with new families and new growth. And so you have to take that into effect as well. And of course, the FES scholarship is a new impact that we have felt in the last couple of years that we have obviously cannot ignore. So when we talk about enrollment changes, enrollment drives everything. It drives our staffing, it drives class sizes, transportation routes. Ultimately, it drives the funding that we have. And right now, when you talk about the affordability to live in Sarasota County, like I said, the sprawling housing developments that are occurring in pockets of our county, the scholarships that may be pulling students into new different opportunities, we have to be really accurate in our forecasting. No longer does forecasting just become an administrative task that we do in the spring and in the fall, but it's really about how do we plan far out 5, 10 years to really offer and really survive as an organization. If we lag behind, we're going to find ourselves losing the enrollment game. So we have to keep that at the front. So Schools of Hope. This is a new piece of legislation that really came in at the very end of the budget cycle in June of last year. And it kind of snuck in there. And what it essentially does is it allows a charter operator who is designated as a School of Hope to exist in a public school space where there are underutilized student stations. So I'll give you an example. If we have a school that is under 50%, half the school is empty. We have maybe a wing, or we have several classrooms that are not being currently utilized because enrollment has declined over the years. That provides an opportunity for a School of Hope operator to essentially make an intent to say, we want to designate that space for our school. And if they do that, the kicker is we also have to, as a district, not provide only the space, but we have to provide the transportation for the students, the food service, the custodial, the security support, the shared spaces, the cafeteria, the gyms. All of that becomes at no cost to the operator. That just is a part of our district, folds into that. So in plain terms, I feel like it's a subsidizing of our buildings and our resources when we allow that to happen. So we want to be proactive in looking strategically at what seats are available, what program do we need to have to make it relevant to attract families, to ensure that we're filling our schools with students who are choosing our public school system. The FES scholarship, we know, has expanded dramatically and has had an impact on our budget. Every student who actually opts for a scholarship, that funding is going to go to them, whether they choose to homeschool or go to private school. And then, of course, as that funding shifts, that is going to affect our staffing levels, what programs we can offer. It's not a one-for-one, and that, I think sometimes it's lost. Well, the money follows the child. Yes, in that sense, but here's the problem. In order to operate a school, there are fixed costs. It's going to cost the same to turn the lights on in the building, whether there's 5 students or 100 students. It's going to cost the same to have one SRO, at least minimally, at a campus, whether it's 400 students or 20 students. So there are fixed costs that are involved here. And so as enrollment declines, it squeezes the resources that much more when you talk about that shift or moving students to another educational option. So we also know that there's been a lot of problems with the implementation of the FES scholarship program. This is not me arguing what's a good thing or a bad thing. This is just telling you the impacts that we're currently experiencing. And what I would say is, as Florida continues to lead down the path of the Florida Empowerment Scholarship, we've got to advocate to have the implementation of the scholarship program be done fairly, equitably, and not at the detriment of the school districts. And that's what I'll continue to push as we have our conversations with legislatures, as we make visits to Tallahassee, I'm not saying scholarships are going away, but I am saying they've got to fix the implementation of it, because it is, just last year, we educated 250 students in our public school system who applied for a scholarship, and they were double funded. And so ultimately, we get punished because now we're not going to get funded for educating those students because the fact that they are had applied for a scholarship. And that's just an implementation issue that has to be ironed out. So what are we going to do? We got to act. We have to move forward, and we're not going to curse the darkness. We're going to be strategic as an organization, and it requires us to plan and to have processes and be strategic. And anytime you're talking about programmatic changes or additions, there's a process to this. I mean, at first, we got to look and assess. We got to look at our data to understand where are we at. We have to look with that information, what programs and partnerships exist or could we possibly explore? What's the best fit for our district? Not every program is a program necessarily the right fit for us. And then once we make those decisions, how do we implement that? What does that look like in terms of timeline? How do we communicate that? Who's responsible? All of those is a part of the planning process. And of course, continual evaluation around, hey, is it working for us? Do we need to make refinements? Do we need to adjust? So as we've looked just in phases of this is going to be a multi-phased approach in order to really achieve the ultimate outcome of maximizing our resources. It really does start kind of here at the center of the county, northern center, I guess you could say. We've looked at our utilization across the district, and there are several schools that we have been having conversations about, but ultimately it really started around 4 distinct schools that are really teetering at 50% and below utilization right now. And that is Wilkinson Elementary, Brentwood, Alta Vista, and Gulfgate Elementary Schools. So in the planning phases of all of this, we wanted to start there because that, I believe, other than our Booker schools, we do know that Emma Booker and Booker Middle School are 2 other schools that are of high concern for us in terms of utilization. This is where we needed to start in what we would call a phased 1 approach. And even within phase 1, you have phase 1A, B, and C, 3 parts to phase 1, is how do we increase the utilization at those 4 schools, maximize our resources, and make sure that we have intentionality in what we're doing here. So that's how it really started in the conversation. And so phase 1 was examining Wilkinson and what that would essentially do in this proposal, and these are conversations that we have had as a team and as a staff, which now is being brought forth publicly with the board to have some input in, is to look at a repurposing of Wilkinson Elementary School. And by doing that, it would be moving students strategically, and we'll get to that in a moment. I have a slide that'll share the boundaries, moving students to Brentwood, Alta Vista, and Gulfgate from Wilkinson to push that utilization to a safer place. It would essentially be emptying Wilkinson for repurposing for other district facility usage, which could be, when we talk about operational costs and savings, is moving the district office into a facility like the school. So that is part of the process of what we've been looking at. Part B would be to look at the landings and maximize how we are, obviously we utilize this building. There's a lot of deferred maintenance. There's a lot of cost to operate the landings. How do we maximize our savings by potentially selling the landings and moving into a facility that we own, such as Wilkinson Elementary? And then phase 1C, the third part of that, is our middle school reimagination. So reimagining how we do middle school. We wanted to pilot with Brookside Middle School. We think there's a prime opportunity. We have new leadership. We've got staff that is energized and ready to see that school flourish. And so we've started that process, and how do we reimagine the middle school experience? And so by that, increasing utilization and enrollment and bringing programs that really are attractive to our families. So that's the first phase of the approach. Phase 2, 3 is really taking a look at all of the different programs and partnerships that we offer. And I've mentioned many of these already, so you can see them on the screen. How do we maximize these two areas in order to ensure that our utilization is at its max? So it all starts with feedback. We have started that process. In terms of the parent survey, we want to make sure that our parents in our community, whether you are a traditional public school family or you're a private school, homeschool, or a charter school, we have a survey open right now throughout the month of September that families in our community can participate to tell us about why they choose the option they choose. What are the interests that they have as a family? And how does the middle school experience fare for them, and what would they like to see differently, and how can we improve our level of service as an organization? Additionally, we have teacher focus groups. We have started at Brookside Middle School, and those groups are working on a model where they will offer some very small learning community themed programming, and that's going very well in terms of the direction with there. But we want to continue to look at these two stakeholder groups as drivers of where we go in our decision making. All right, so right now the state is looking very closely at how school districts will be using facilities. So under the law, we have to report out annually what our student stations are, what the utilizations of our facilities are each year. This has to be reported in January, so it's really incumbent upon us to take some decisions about the future of our facilities and how we're going to maximize our seats. And we've got a lot going on, as you can see on this particular slide. We need to evaluate and then decide how we want to move forward with maximizing our student stations within our facilities. If we don't do that, that report can be used by School of Hope operators, once it becomes public, to then determine whether they have intent to move into some of our public schools, if there are space available. So, what do we need to do in order to strategize on that maximization? We need to get out and visit each of our campuses. So we'll be doing site visits. We've already started that process. If we are going to repurpose any of our classroom space, and there are legitimate reasons where you may take a room that used to be used as a classroom and use it for another educational purpose, if we do that, which there are opportunities to do that throughout the district, we have to have the DOE come out and do a site visit and a spot survey to approve that before we redesignate any of our classroom space as appropriate, including our portables as well. Fortunately, I believe now there's been some change in the law where that's not counted towards your permanent capacity where it used to be, so that's been helpful. But all of that has to be reflected and changed prior to January when we submit the report to the DOE. And I think that becomes public in April. Am I correct, Dr. Kemp? Okay. So back to phase 1, if you look at Wilkinson proposal, what this would look like, and you can see this on the screen here, is currently the level of service of Wilkinson is 50%. Alta Vista, Brentwood, and Gulfgate range from 48, 56, and 60% utilization. So this was as of the beginning of the school year on August 22nd. If we were to split, if you look at the map and we take the red boundary, which is the Wilkinson boundary, and we split them into the 3 colored sections, the yellow, the green, and the blue, those students would be rebalanced to the 3 schools. So students that are within the red perimeter inside of that are yellow would go to Alta Vista, green would go to Brentwood, and blue would go to Gulfgate. That would potentially move the projected level of service for the zone students there. And remember, we have to do our projections on zoned enrollment, that even if the students don't actually choose that school, they may be in private school or homeschool, we have to have space for them. So we account for that in our projections. Would move the level of service to Alta Vista to 86%, Brentwood to 110, and Gulfgate to 89. The actual level of service would be in the high 70s to low 80s based on current enrollment. So with that proposal, which we will have discussion at the end of this presentation, there would be a proposed timeline where we would engage in faculty meetings, we would engage with boundary advisory committees, we would have community meetings to ensure that we were to hear back from all stakeholders before any board action would take place. And the goal would to have that process done by mid to late November so that the board could take action. When we talk about the landings, one of the reasons that's been brought to the discussion today is that it is an older facility. It was built in 1984. We purchased it in 1995. It is constructed of 4 main buildings with about 90,000 square feet. A lot of concerns around the facility because there really isn't a single point of entry. It's been a challenge. We know that we're always dealing with multiple entrances and security and all of that. The boardroom and the functionality and the capacity here has always been a concern for us. We're in the middle of a flood zone. We have very low wind rating on this facility. There is a deferred maintenance of over almost $63 million of just like fixing things that need to be fixed and haven't been fixed. And so a lot of concerns about the current building. Just to operate the landings, it runs us over $600,000 to keep the lights on, to pay the association fees, and to keep the facilities upkeep. If we talk about the sale of the property, market conditions would take between $14 and $18 million potentially. That could be used for capital needs. So we would then maybe to help offset the cost of a renovation or a purchase, whatever we decide to do with the new central office location. We could lease back the property while we're renovating. So while we may sell the property, you could operate out of here on a year-to-year basis until renovations and the move was complete. And that would run us probably about 1.7 a year. If we do, we would obviously need to think about considerations regarding what do we do about repurposing the existing facility before moving into as a district office space. We would want to make sure that stakeholders within the district office had some input, making sure there were parking requirements, making sure that the costs are manageable, and that all of our funding strategies are intact before making that final decision. So possible next steps would be prior to relocation is have the market analysis done, make sure that we have a listing agent put it on the market, sell it and enter into a lease agreement. And then before moving in 6 months prior, making sure that we have all these things in terms of the contract and the market analysis completed as well. So for the purposes of our discussion today would be possible next steps is to talk about what do we need to do with Wilkinson moving forward. I would suggest that we have the spot survey done by the DOE, which would lead to engaging in the timeline that I shared, start engaging with faculty, start engaging with the community, any continued board work sessions and public hearings that need to have before we take any action. And through that process, we begin planning what it would look like if we were to vacate the landing, sell that property, and move into a central office. That would be phase 1A and B, as well as C being we're working currently right now through Brookside Reimagining. And then lots of conversations are continuing for phases 2 and 3 with different partnerships and program offerings that we need to upsell. This year, we launched early college at Northport and at Booker. We are engaged in those junior achievement conversations, and we're exploring things like childcare, employee childcare, and all of these other facility maximization strategies. So none of these are necessarily all done step 1, step 2, step 3. They're kind of simultaneously happening all together. But the first big one would be phase one, which would be the Wilkinson landing conversation. So I'm going to stop there. We've got a team who have been doing a lot of data and analyzation around this topic. Have some conversation, what questions come to mind, what's the discussion, what is the pulse of the board, maybe providing me some next steps of what you would like me to do and direct our team to move forward with that. So I'll hand it back over to you, Ms. Marinelli.
Any board member have any questions or discussion or? Yes, you do. Ms. Rose?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Marinelli. I know that this is a challenging time, and I want to recognize that there's a lot of changes with the state scholarships and a lot of things happening. I think that I praise you for thinking with the innovation and the staff and looking at how can we make this positive and how can we make it more exciting. I know that, my experiences in middle school, which are extensive here locally, it can be exciting to look at programming. I encourage us as we're going forward to think about how schools obtain their individual identities, and the marketing that goes with that are key. I feel like we may have, for responsible purposes, moved to more generic, but identities and competition and the resources to teachers. I know that programming is one of my loves, whether it was IB, gifted, et cetera, or technology. How do we move forward and look at, is there compensation for teachers? The work that goes in, for example, to training for an international baccalaureate or changing a whole school to a technology focus is extensive in what we're asking of them. So I, again, praise all of you. I think you're on a spectacular track. My last thoughts are with the K-8 piece. I think that's extensive. It's something that I saw firsthand as a middle school principal and believed in. Are we looking at any future thoughts on K-8 versus that transition from elementary school to high school? And I'm excited to see where we go with this. And state funding. For example, we were able to obtain state funding for the agriculture program, which is an exciting and needed piece. So what is the trend in our legislature in supporting programming that's that meets a need that, and again, would be exciting? And then the last piece that I'd like to add to it is small learning communities. Middle schools and high schools, if I talk to tens of thousands of families over multiple years, that's the number one piece you get. First of all, they want to get excited about programming, but as they leave, they're very comfortable elementary schools and move into what appears to be very huge. How do we take our schools and move them into programmatic small learning communities? But again, challenging, lots of change, but measure exciting, the potential that exists with you and the highly skilled staff. Thank you.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Thank you. I appreciate Mrs. Rose's spin on this because I do think that there is, we have faced a moment where we knew this moment was coming, and you can look at it two ways, one of two ways. It can be where, it's all kind of dire enclosures and, change can be ominous, but it also can create extraordinary opportunities. I look forward to the feedback of the survey. Do we have a sense of timeline on that?
So the survey is open until September 30th.
Okay.
That's the one around just programming in general, the middle school experience. As of yesterday, we were close to 800 responses so far. So I think it will be statistically significant when we finalize that survey regarding the results.
Right. And so, and the reason I ask that is when we talk about programmatic pieces, what we think we know versus what's really happening. And again, you want to have a good spread to really drive into that. But then there is the reality of just, I think you said it very well. I mean, the natural aggregation and growth of the sprawl of our community, where once upon a time in 1950s and 60s and 70s, community is now no longer really being inhabited. And we're doing down South County or going out east. And so we're seeing that growth there. And so that's where that area is being hit the most. And so when I look at a couple different things, the childcare piece is huge. I know it personally, and I hear about it all the time. And when you think about competition, and if I take our scholarship schools, a lot of them go 8:30 to 9. And now that's expensive, but these are the things that all of these come into play when it comes to, when I think about decision making, it comes to culture, it comes to the environment, the safety piece, the program piece, the size piece of it, and then the logistics of it. Like, can a family actually get there? Can they get there on time? What is that cost impact? And so all of those, I think, should be part of our conversation when it comes to, and now that's predominantly in the elementary, but even in middle school, that comes to bear. And so when to be honest, I know enough to be dangerous when it comes to the Schools of Hope as it now has been rebranded. It's kind of been, Schools of Hope has existed, but it's turned into something completely different. But my question is with these areas of capacity, and I think of programs, what options do we have that are alternative to traditional education, but can serve our families that may be a lure to them? I think we think about, there are, and again, I don't know from the legislative standpoint, and I understand we have to get approval when we talk about capacities, but I think, as Mrs. Rose, looking at this as a challenge of saying, all right, game on, what can we do? Now, do we not have the population in those areas? That's a very different topic. And that's a reality we have to come to. But in other areas, if it may not be as substantial, but we may see those trends, 10, 15, 20% capacity issues, or areas where we don't want to open ourselves up to it, if there's areas where we can think programmatically that are outside the box, and I know later on we'll talk about high-level AI, but different things that are just completely on a new stratosphere that really allow us for some great opportunities. I love when we think about programmatically, again, the agricultural piece, different areas that are just outside of our core thought, but that will absolutely provide quality academics, education, and robust ability for them to graduate from our schools prepared. I hope to see that. I have no doubt that the team in here can do that. I know that's a lot on your shoulders, but I believe that this can be looked at as an opportunity. And I just wonder how creative can we get truly when it comes down to the capacity piece of it. Obviously, the financial impact of that when bringing on a new program, there's going to be expenses there, but understanding what additional funding can come through that, and we be a leader in that those are all areas that just have me thinking through. When it comes to the landings, I know that we talked about I feel like forever, for a really long time. And I didn't really get serious until I think 5 or 6 years ago. And then it kind of was quiet. And so in my mind, a central office should be central, not right off the water, right North County. It's, it is what it is because we're not height of the market, so we're not going to get the best. It is what it is. But in my mind, I think, and if I understand correctly, it would be a temporary, the concept is if we were to move to what Wilkinson, as these phases go, and central office would be to move over to what is now Wilkinson, that would be temporary time, or is that seen as, because, and my goal would be that we would, because we have capital improvement plans that phase out multiple years in advance. We have community developments there are developers at master planning that we can have conversations. Perhaps there's land somewhere, I don't know, but I'm saying something more central by the highway, because I want to pull in staff that it made easy for them to get to drive to get there, what have you. So I'd like to, as we move to that, I know we have to look at a couple different decisions, but some of these are capital plans that require multiple years in advance to consider, and I want to include that in the conversation as we go forward.
I know there's been a lot of conversations past about the potential. Mr. Dumas, can you talk a little bit about more of the central idea around moving the landings, or the district office, I should say, into more central county?
Absolutely. And Ms. Ziegler, you're exactly right. We've had many conversations about this facility and what we wanted to do with it, where we wanted to place it. And I think a lot of it comes down to land. Where do you own land, right? Because you talk about the building of a new facility from the ground up, you're talking a very expensive proposition these days. And so the conversations we've had in the past were always about trying to make sure we could offset as much of those costs with the sale of this property, because we always try to maximize our revenue at our school sites. We spend at our school sites, right? We want to take care of our kids, and we always do. And so how do we make this facility as much cost neutral as we possibly can? And so wrapped around those conversations, we've had a lot of meetings with developers where we've talked about exactly what you said. Where do you as a developer have property? Where do we have currently property where we could potentially make a swap to try and get in that sweet spot with the land? And so we always talked about mid-county, someplace close to 75. So we've had those conversations. Property's getting more scarce every day, I would say, but I think we could still have more of those conversations if you wanted to. We own a couple of pieces of property. We looked at one at one time, which is basically right by transportation in Osprey, right next to Pineview. The landings would fit there. It's been cited on that property as a concept design, so that's more central than we currently have here. But there are other opportunities we could explore with exchange of property and things of that nature. So depending on which way the board wanted to go, we could explore those opportunities again. Again, it's always a changing market, and those conditions change. So it's kind of point in time conversation, but whatever way we wanted to go, at the direction of Mr. Connor, Superintendent Connor, we could have those conversations.
Thank you for that. And so, Mr. Connor, and I know there's we have timelines here, right? So I raised that because I believe that the central office of the district has a significant impact in the community when you think about the hiring of we're the largest hirer of the county, or first or second, at least, once upon a time. So that central ability, I think, is important to the conversation as we move forward, but recognizing that we also are up against the clock when we're talking about capacity. So I just wanted to put that on the table for other board members to consider, and as we think about multiple years of planning. And those are my thoughts.
Ms. Barker?
I am sad to be having this conversation, of course. I do see the potential for new and innovative ideas, and I'm thrilled that we're talking about childcare, talking about, what else can we deliver for our families. But anytime we talk about closing a school like that, that guts you. And I would say Wilkinson, they worked so hard to become the nationally STEM certified school. I believe they're the only one in our district. And so this appears to be inevitable. I understand that. And I think we absolutely need to take swift and decisive action. But how can we preserve some of what makes Wilkinson special through its staff and its families as they move into their other school families? How can we make that better for those families is something I'd like to consider. And then for the benefit of the public, would be important to understand some of the history of what that looks like in our state and in other counties, and why we are so dedicated to making sure that we protect our own schools and interests. Schools of Hope took over a small district in Florida several years ago, a D-rated school district. And they came in with tons of money. They got loans and influx of cash, and they were able to help that district for about a year. They moved up, I think, to a C. And then after that, right back down to a D, because at the end of the day, they're not a great answer for communities. They're really not. And at the end of their 5-year contract, that charter school said, no, thank you, hard pass. We don't want to stay here anymore. And they up and left. They left those families. They left those teachers. They left that community and turned it back to the school district. And now the school district has earned a B rating, which is wonderful. They're really working hard. But I think it's important to note that Schools of Hope is a failed experiment, and to push them into our schools is not good for our students, and it's not good for our families. And as a parent who actively uses our public schools, I feel strongly that they are not good for us. And I don't want Sarasota to be open for business for these giant hedge fund owners of charter schools that do not do good work and do not have good outcomes for students. So that's what I have.
Mr. Edwards?
So, a couple things from my perspective. I know that the conversation about Wilkinson got out onto the street. And partially, I have to say that the last conversation that I had was that there were lots of things on the table. And I'm confused for how we got zeroed in specifically on Wilkinson. And frankly, I had been talking about the landings and its shift since I've been here. It got derailed when we lost the superintendent. So there was, once again, another example of all the best intentions of what I perceive to be continuous improvement within the school district and capacity and utilizations of space and buildings. That's conversation that I had from day one. I think Mr. Dumas and I had a really nice sit down when I got here, and we talked about those kinds of things. What is concerning to me is that right from Mr. Connor's opening lines, in order to protect public education, in order to protect our resources, what does that is analogous to protecting our students. That's how, why? Why are we being put in that position is my first question. Why? And it's automatic to me that several of the board members up here automatically think it's a good idea and how exciting and how much fun. When the reason why Schools of Hope is such a threat is because they want to come here because they share in our referendum. We are a wealthy county. We will pay all of those. I want to start that franchise. I want to do that because I want to get all that. I mean, that's why they want to come here. And it's wise for Mr. Connor to have this, what I perceive to be an aggressive timeline. So my first question is, what is a School for Hope? How can it qualify to be here? I think we need to give that to the public so they understand the exact threat. What is a School for Hope? Is it a collaboration? Is it one school? Is it multiple schools? I'm not sure the public understands that. The other place I'm baffled for the legislature, we cannot get funding for VPK and pre-K to fill capacity. We have capacity. We've been trying to get it done. We've been trying to do this. We could fill those classrooms up in a heartbeat with VPK and pre-K, and yet we're being, instead of protecting a neighborhood and offering childcare that is early education, we're being in a mode to be protective. That's just unfair for our constituents and their tax dollars. Why did we choose Wilkinson? I'm not on that page yet. I know that there were a couple of conversations. There was conversation about actually taking Brookside and moving an elementary into it so that it would be a K-8. So there's just a lot of questions that I still have, but don't want to jeopardize putting our buildings and our schools at risk. And in terms of landings, I've been on that page since I've got here. So however we decide to explore the landings, I'm wide open to having that conversation, but I really want to try and zero in on why Wilkinson, why not a K-8, why, what are all the rationales that brought us to this presentation? Thank you.
Mr. Connor, would you like to address any of that, please?
Yeah, I'll start with the schools of hope. So that definition is changing pretty rapidly. I mean, it originally was a nonprofit charter that served schools that were considered persistently low performing. That definition has expanded. And so as we see the new state rule, and I think Mr. Parento may have the latest, and when I say new, I'm talking about within the last couple of weeks. So you're seeing changes in how we're defining a school of hope. But it started originally with serving in areas where Title I students, where there are schools designated as persistently low performing. But now, and I'll let Mr. Parento share a little bit about the new definition.
So, Mr. Edwards, the definition of a school of hope, and there's kind of 3 prongs to it. A school of hope is a charter school operated by a hope operator which A, serves students from one or more persistently low-performing schools, or students who reside in a Florida Opportunity Zone. There's a separate definition of that comes from the Department of Treasury as a qualified opportunity zone. The School of Hope has to be located in a Florida Opportunity Zone or in an attendance zone of a persistently low-performing school or within a 5-mile radius of such school. However, this year, in the legislature, during the legislative session at the end, they passed a change to that a school of hope may be located outside of a Florida Opportunity Zone or persistently low-performing school attendance zone if the school district does not have underused, vacant, or surplus property available to the hope operator within the Florida Opportunity Zone or the persistently low-performing school attendance zone. That's where the legislature left it. Just last week, the Florida Department of Education posted their notice of proposed rulemaking with definitions about what an underused, vacant, or surplus facility is. And within that rule, they define underused, vacant, or surplus facility to mean an entire facility or portion thereof that is not fully used or is used irregularly or intermittently by the district for instructional program use. Then they define the term fully used, which is used in the previous definition, means a facility that does not have unused student stations. So they leave it there. They don't go any further as to, is it one unused student station? Is it 100? And we've been having conversations about that very subject to provide feedback to the Florida Department of Education before they move forward with their current plan to vote on that on September 24th.
In terms of Wilkinson and why the conversation starts there, as many of you know, you've been serving on the board or in this district for a long time. Wilkinson has struggled for a long time with being underutilized for several years, along with the 3 schools that the potential to rezone students into have also struggled. When you talk about performance, and we've had these conversations in our one-on-ones, Wilkinson has been the lowest performing of those particular schools. And when you talk about even putting an attractor, and I applaud the work of Susan Nations and the team at Wilkinson to make that a nationally recognized STEM school. That was a very hard effort to do that. And it's a great attractor there, but unfortunately, it's not changed and shifted the dynamics in enrollment at Wilkinson. And we continue to have the competition of charter schools that are draining and pulling kids with different types of programming, smaller environments. Unfortunately, it should have been addressed even sooner. The STEM thing was great we got last year, but we've gotten down this path of declining enrollment in this particular region of our county, as well as up in the north side. We think that rebalancing is the best approach to this, starting with a rebalancing with the 4 schools, because it is every one of those schools could be a target for a School of Hope. So that approach to repurpose one into the others spreads that, it maximizes our strategy there. We've had a lot of conversations about different types of models, whether K-8. It'd be great if we could move all our schools to K-8. Unfortunately, logistically, it's impossible to do that. One of the things with Brookside that we've looked at is starting with this reimagining through the small or micro learning communities, as we've been coining that term, and doing new programmatics as a phased approach before we move to any more drastic changes. Maybe if that doesn't work, we have to look at how we drastically shift Brookside. Maybe it is a K-8 model. But we're looking at other K-8 models too as well. There's a lot of conversations with all of our schools. Think about McIntosh and its enrollment right now. Think about Venice Middle School and its enrollment. Drastically under-enrolled. And so the start with Wilkinson, based on where it resides in relation to those three schools, is a good starting point for having an effect on multiple schools versus just one. When you repurpose students, you also too would want to repurpose them into schools that have had better performance history, right? That's going to be better for families to know that their kids may be moving from a C school to a B school or an A school versus an A school to a C school. So there's a lot of dynamics that have to play into that as well. So that's just a little of the rationale for why Wilkinson is the starting point. You have to start somewhere, and this is a critical area geographically within our county that needs attention quickly.
Thank you. I think I asked all those questions for a reason, because I think the families that are involved in Wilkinson and love Wilkinson need to hear that it wasn't because this happened in June. We've been exploring a lot of different options and a continuous improvement model, at least I know you and I have, for a long time. And I wanted everybody to know that this isn't just, is this a good idea? There's a whole lot more to the same conversation that will continue. And it's important for the community as well as the board to understand that it's not just solving this problem, it's paying attention to the long conversation of where we're going in continuous improvement, and how vouchers and the Schools of Hope are still presenting a problem to public education.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Thank you. I think it was somewhat answered there, but I want to ask this question directly because I think it matters. And even, so I'll say because I know what you said about Wilkinson, having been here for a while, they've really tried, Mrs. Nation's really tried, is it Dr. or Mrs.? Tried to really imagine a way to increase enrollment. And that's why I also mentioned that area, just the natural population of it may be such that you're not going to ever get that kind of enrollment based on the growth and the demographics. And with my question is posed not just for Wilkinson, the other ones you mentioned, but you also mentioned Venice Middle. I remember years ago, Venice Middle lost enrollment, and that was when we had a conversation, really the first one that I recall in competition, on having to reimagine different programs to bring people back because there was a perception about Venice Middle. I know Mrs. Rose knows what I'm talking about, but and having to rework and have a real marketing plan to the community to revitalize that enrollment, and still has struggled, of course. So there's a couple different elements, but we're bringing in Schools of Hope, which I don't doubt, but we would have to have this conversation whether Schools of Hope was an issue or not. Is that true?
Yeah, from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, we have to talk about the utilization of our facilities.
Okay, and I thank you, and it's important because I don't dismiss that there are things out there, but even when Mr. Parenta reads whatever cockamamie definition that was, which I don't know what that means, and honestly, I'm ready to go fight for how can you run a business that way? And I'm the biggest advocate up here for school choice and all of that, but that doesn't make sense, and I feel pretty confident in what we're capable in this community in this district to do that I don't feel threatened by it. I just don't. So the point being is, we would have this conversation regardless of Schools of Hope because of the pure fact that we have overcapacity, full stop. And so when we look at district-wide, and my question is, because I don't want to plug a hole here, and then, because there's a lot of feeder school component. I mean, there's a multiple trajectory that you're looking at that impacts families. And so this is one region, but we just mentioned something about Central County there. I would feel much more comfortable, and this is a very aggressive timeline. And again, I'm one board member, but I think I want to do it right versus feeling like our back's against the wall because we're afraid some school is going to try to come in and I don't know, occupy some of our hallways. Now, again, I welcome the reality check that I may need here, but I'm just saying that I want to do it right. And this conversation needs to be had regardless of Schools of Hope or not. And so when I look at the district as a whole, and all of the areas that have capacity issues, and we have a great team that monitors this, and obviously, of course, we have COVID that completely changed everything when we had a ton of people coming in and now a ton of people coming out. But some of it's going to be programmatic. I think there's a lot of things that we talk about. How do we get families back? And we will continue to have that conversation. But a lot of that's going to, hit points plus or minus 5%. So, right? We're not talking massive 10, 15, 20%. I don't foresee. So when we look at the district as a whole and we talk about utilization, where are we? And how does this impact? Because there could be a master redistricting, I mean, God forbid, but I don't want a slow and painful death versus looking at it and what does this look like and then making those adjustments. And has that been considered?
Absolutely. Currently, there are 12 identified schools that really are significantly areas of concern that we have already scheduled, and by October 1st, we'll have met with those schools to talk about programming, partnerships. Some schools are going to require minimal conversations by having a spot survey with the FDLE. We may repurpose a classroom here or a couple of rooms over here. Some schools are going to require some extensive partnerships and some innovation around there, particularly the 12 schools that we're talking about. And Dr. Johnson actually is leading these conversations through our Strategic Innovation office. So it's already in the works. These things are already happening. When we talk about making decisions, there has to be a phased approach because you can't rip the Band-Aid off and do everything at once. The capacity is not there to do that. Because when you talk about programs and partnerships, funding, we mentioned that, it costs money. You have to build curriculum. You have to secure resources, the training that's involved to Mrs. Rose's point. All of those things have to be considered and has to be done in a phased approach. But the planning of that is there in terms of the infrastructure of what needs to be examined, the 12 identified schools, what conversations regarding programming and programmatics and partnerships, what things can we repurpose very quickly that wouldn't create any disruption to the school, and then these drastic things that have implications for the start of next school year, like Wilkinson, if we were to repurpose or rebalance the populations to 3 schools, you would want to do aggressively so that you give parents and community enough time to understand what's happening for them, going into the 26-27 year. So that's why we start with the aggressiveness, particularly around this issue with Wilkinson and the 4 schools versus laying out, here's everything we're going to do.
Okay, I kind of knew the answer to that, but I wanted to make sure from the public's perspective, because there are a lot of schools and the whole district as a whole that's experienced change, just the migration of the population. That's the reality. There is competition as a part of it, but it is not ultimately at the core of this conversation. I think that's fair to be said, because are we over capacity at any of our schools? I mean, I know Sky Ranch, are we over capacity at any of those schools?
Well, we happen to be at Venice High School. That's one of the great things about opening up Welland Park next year is Venice High School is over capacity. Does anyone else? And Diane, do you have? I know Diane's probably got it memorized.
They have increased in enrollment and the number of students living in the zone. So they are now at 125% compared to 120% enrolled utilization, and up from 140% to 147% in zoned utilization.
Thank you. And I'll close with this. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate all these because there's a lot of moving parts, and so it's very easy to get stuck and say, here's the boogeyman and this is what's happening. Yes, we do have competition. Yes, there is a variety of changes at the legislature, but if everyone at the core is doing their job the right way and articulating what's happening and making good fiscal sound decision making and looking at where our utilization is, responding to families and providing core academics and not all these other things that are distracting, then we're gonna be successful. And I know, Mr. Connor, you've been in different districts that have had to deal with this. And it wasn't because of Schools of Hope, it was because of FES. It was because of general migration of families and just the growth of a community. So I just want to be clear because I think it's easy to take, my colleagues like to, use that as a piece. But to be candid, this conversation would happen whether Schools of Hope was on the table or not.
Ms. Rose?
Thank you, Ms. Manley. I just wanted to say, yes, you are correct. With looking at capacity, I go all the way back to the 80s with Southside Elementary. There was a time when it was looking at being closed because of capacity. So closing schools and capacity is something that has been through my career in multiple schools, and it does boil down to a community perspective and all the things that have been talked about today. And when we look at that community perspective and we look at a think tank, you're doing a phenomenal job of getting feedback from families and from teachers and staff and the excellence that you have in resources here at the central office. I encourage us also, I look back to the local foundations. For example, Gulf Coast Community Foundation and the Bransick Foundation contributed $9 million to middle schools to transition them with technological tools, state-of-the-art, and that was a huge success at that time. So we have so many options, and I also don't rule out a think tank that includes we live in a community that has 3 college/universities, USF, New College, and State College of Florida. And I know we have some partnerships, but what does that kind of think tank look like? Again, I look at this as exciting. I love programming, and the one thing I know and I'm confident with, our families love programming. That's what they're attracted to. That's what brings interest, engagement, and brings life back to things. When I look at the landings facility, I'm fully in agreement, not just, currently with this board, but 3 superintendents ago with Lori White. And I'm sure my colleagues sitting up here that have that history, it's been a conversation that's long overdue. This facility is extraordinarily run down, expensive to maintain, and it is, even in today's market, we're looking at a high-priced piece of land that could be a benefit to the whole process of where we land. So I encourage the movement with that piece, but the think tank piece is exciting and just bringing in multiple facets of our community that are already involved, have been involved, where you, Superintendent Conn, and your staff control, as you do well, what that product looks like in that process. But again, thank you for your innovation and really tackling this.
Mr. Edwards?
I don't want to belabor too much more, but that's what I mean by a continuous improvement process. If we look at the superintendent, what he did in his first 2 years was come in and revamp academics, and we couldn't get to this part of the continuous improvement part until get his feet wet, learn who everybody is, put his programs, put his spin, hire his people. And so, yes, all of that is true. Yes, it's a continuous improvement model. Yes, there is a lot to be learned in terms of being competitive. I think we've talked about that since I have been a board member, especially where choice has been a conversation. But I still want to point out that you may call it a boogeyman. I call it a threat to public education when the continuous improvement process should be going on anyhow, and we've been trying to do that. So I just want the public to be reassured that this isn't a knee-jerk reaction. That's why I asked a lot of my questions, so that Mr. Connor can be forthright and talk about all of the time and investigations and Dr. Johnson's work going into this, so that it's not just a knee-jerk.
Any other comments from board members? Mr. Connor?
I appreciate the conversation. There's all points made today are all I would agree with, actually, because I think it's all and. There is urgency. There is urgency with the schools of hope because we don't know what that's going to do. But to the point that Ms. Ziegler made, absolutely, regardless of the schools of hope, this conversation needs to happen. So in my point of view, after listening to the discussion of the board, I don't think I disagree with anything that I've heard. I think it's all of those and so I appreciate the input of every one of you. This is not taken lightly. This is not a result of the budget crunch either, like to the point that Mr. Edwards made. This is something long-term. Birth rates are declining, actually. We have 150 less kindergartners this year. And if that trend continues and compounds year after year, this exacerbates itself. So it's not one thing causes us to have, that brings us to this point in this conversation. But when you kind of see the train going down the track and it's running out of track, you've got to change direction. You got to stop it. We've got to take action. So sometimes those actions are not popular, and they are very, there's an emotional aspect to that we definitely want to consider. We want to preserve the great history of a school like Wilkinson or any school that we would ever have this conversation about. So those definitely will be top of mind and priority as we move forward with these conversations. But I think everything that's been brought to the discussion today is true. It is a reality that we are facing. And I appreciate the board's openness to have these, because a lot of boards are afraid to touch these types of topics. But this board recognizes the need to act, and I appreciate just having the conversation today. So thank you.
Ms. Rose?
Thank you, Ms. Marinelli. I just think it's important to add one thing. I don't want the public to misinterpret the continuous improvement model, which is coming up today. We've been in a continuous improvement model as an educator, teacher, principal, executive in this district for 3 decades since I started working here. It's very much connected to progress monitoring the product. And if the product in the continuous improvement model, which has been in this district for several decades, is not improving satisfactorily, then you're making changes. And a little bit of what this conversation is about, making changes so that our quality product continues to be there for our community and our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll close this out. So, Mr. Connor, thank you very much for all the work you've done, and staff, because it's not easy. And when I look around this room, I've been a part of this district for 4 decades. And we have had conversations of closing Southside and had to reimagine that school. Closing the old Booker Bayhaven, which was and now is Bayhaven School of Basics Plus. We've gone through all of that. And it's always a continuous improvement. I started in my career at Brentwood Elementary. At that time, it was like 1,100 students. We had portables everywhere. It was a highly desired school. We didn't have anything like school choice back then. People had to do a reassignment and fib to get to a school. And then it got so big, we had to build a new school, and it divided that school. At one time, Wilkinson was a big school, had the portables. Same thing with Gulfgate. These are all top quality, Alta Vista, top quality schools, top quality staff, administration, but unfortunately, they are shrinking in population as far as having children. So, like we said, we would be having this conversation anyway. I think the childcare is excellent, but I want to caution my fellow board members to not say the negative things about School of Hope, because they could come back. And to please not use this room as a political platform. We have issues that we have to solve. And this is a big one, our population and what to do. I was in this building over 15 years ago, before Mr. Dumas, but he and I had conversations because we weren't even ADA compliant to get the doors in the maroon to be able to have, we had people that were in wheelchairs that volunteered here. This building's been a boondoggle. It was nothing, it was originally built for doctor, dentist, office space. And they moved this because I don't know if anybody in this room remembers where the original school board offices were on Hatton Street.
Oh, someone does.
They were portables all put together from World War II. And I'm not kidding. So we ended up here, and it's been a boondoggle. We've had mold, we've had the windows replaced. You name it, it's a money pit. We could be right along with that movie, The Money Pit. So regardless of where we end up with a facility, it has been going on for a long time. So, and I'm going to say this, and to go back to the past superintendent or so has no purpose. You inherited all this because nobody has really ever had these serious conversations about what's happening with our schools. So I commend you for that, because we need to move forward. And if anybody wants to go back in the past, then this is not the place for you, because you're our superintendent, this is the board, and our mission is to do things. So with that, thank you all, and so now we will move on to member comments, and Ms. Barker?
Actually, can I go after? I could think some of us had specific things you wanted to discuss. Is that right?
Well, yeah.
Because my comments are related to, I think, Ms. Ziegler's resolution. So it might make more sense.
Well, we've not really have had that come up before, so I don't have a problem with that. Mrs. Ziegler, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I just add, these are my comments, so there's action to be taken. I have 3 items, just bringing forward again the meeting invocation is how I have it titled. I also brought forward a AI policy framework discussion that I hope to have for a future board meeting, and a resolution for consideration. So I'll start with the meeting. I have invocation. We brought this up, I want to say within the last year. There was discussion, the superintendent had provided some information that based on what schools across the state of Florida are doing when it comes to a prayer, invocation, thought of the day, moment of silence. Mrs. Tompkins sent that out to all of us, and just to reiterate, there are 12 districts that do a prayer. There are 22 districts that do an invocation. There are 14 districts that do a moment of silence. There are 3 that do a thought of a day, and then 16 that do none, and that is including us. I would like to conclude with today to get some kind of consensus and direct the superintendent to come back to the board with a policy and a process. I know, again, this discussion occurred previously. There was some research done, and then it kind of just fizzled away. So I don't know what happened, but perhaps there wasn't clarity and direction for the superintendent. So my proposal would be that we ask the superintendent to come back to the board with a policy to allow for a prayer at the beginning of each board meeting, and then we would take action on voting on that.
I have a question with that, Mr. Connor. If it was majority vote for a prayer, what does that actually mean? What is the reality of that if we started with a prayer?
I would believe the policy would need to be very, very clear about how we go about doing that. So there are some examples. I know Miami-Dade has a pretty robust policy that we've researched in the past that we feel really protects the school district, because you know there are civil rights, and there are, you know, when you get down to selecting who's giving the prayer, is it someone on staff? Is it going to be someone out in the community? Are we going to rotate different organizations? All of that would need to be considered in a policy if we were to go there. And just having looked at what's currently existing, we would probably model something very similar to what Miami-Dade would have if that were the direction the board wanted to go.
And if I just may, and I would defer to our general counsel, but doing some research prior to this, there is in the 11th Circuit a ruling that does in fact protect school boards as being a legislative body that does allow for a prayer similar to any kind of legislature or Congress when it comes to convening, as long as it's not coercive. I think there's like 3 different element litmus tests, which I believe, as Mr. Connor said, and there are other districts that do the same, as I mentioned, 12. There are certain parameters that you fall within, and the way in which you introduce it, which again is why I would defer to our administration to run and formalize that policy, but that would allow us and afford us to be well in compliance, but allow for this procedure to occur.
Thank you. Is there any more that you want to elaborate on your?
If I may, I figure we'll just conclude on this one, and then the other 2 are probably very quick as well.
Ms. Barker?
I was just wondering, what's the intent behind adding a prayer or an invocation? You know, we charge all of our staff with being very intentional in what we do and say. And so what does this add to us as an organization?
I'm very glad you asked. I think we have seen over the years certainly a very robust energy inside these chambers. I believe that it really sets the tone. It allows for reflection. We are tasked with very critical decisions over the years. It's something I have been shocked, honestly, that we didn't do in Sarasota County. I believe it really sets the tone for a very positive movement forward for our school district, for the decisions that we have to discuss together, and really allows us the meaningful discernment for us overlaying kind of the presiding of what's taking place inside the chambers. So I think it sets the tone in a very positive way and very meaningful way.
Anything else, Mrs. Barker? Ms. Rose?
Thank you, Ms. Marinelli. I wholeheartedly agree of looking at moving towards a very respectful culture in this boardroom, and the universal themes that could be encompassed within, and how we treat each other, and so forth and so on, those kinds of human elements that you want to see in a organization that works with children and families. And I support the process of looking at a potential policy and what that might entail. Thank you.
Okay, so then our next steps would be.
We need at least 3 people to give him some direction, because I think that's where.
Well, I'm getting there.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So I would concur with that, so we can move forward with it. And by no means does that mean that we're going to be doing it. We're just moving forward and exploring it. And
So to be clear, I want to make sure I'm meeting your expectations as a board. I would bring forth proposals to maybe our October workshop around maybe some policy variations that.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I'll be brief on the other 2. Again, these are just for consideration, future action. We have, the AI one's going to be a bit longer, but also you also do the semi-quincentennial. So 2026 is United States semi-quincentennial, 250th anniversary. There are a lot of districts, a lot of different government bodies across the country taking advantage of celebrating such a monumental moment. I'd love to see our district participate in that. I drafted a resolution that highlights it. It has a blank area. There's some elements that certainly really do fall upon the administration, the superintendent, to really articulate what that encompasses. That's really not the role of the board, but wanted to bring that up for discussion. If this is something the board is supportive of, again, it would direct the superintendent to come back with a draft and also an actual date that makes sense. So that's one. And the other one is we have currently an AI policy. We did adopt, we're one of the first, honestly, but it is skeleton at best. I've raised this concern quite a few times, and it is now dominating headlines, and it is by no surprise. What I believe it is our obligation to not be fearful of it, and I want to be very clear. I think that provides us a great opportunity to look at how to really revitalize education, but I also think there are incredibly important safeguards that we have to put in place by way of policy. And through that, I think it's adopting a policy framework that gives the superintendent and staff that proper guidance. I put together an example, but I think this would be a much more fruitful conversation in a workshop with staff to kind of bring forward what's currently happening, what we're seeing in the way of vendors. There's a lot of areas that I'm intentionally concerned about, which is certainly the privacy piece, the transparency piece, but also just because it's such a fast moving technology, and I am always seem to be geared and focused on the elementary and early education piece that I'm particularly concerned about, that may make sure that to understand that we have proper safeguards in place. So I wanted to ask the board and superintendent about putting together maybe a one-off, honestly, because there is so much to talk about, whether it be professional development or what we're looking at as a district as a whole, kind of coming off of what we talked about even being competitive or thinking about different programmatic pieces. But it's not that we can necessarily do it all at once, but I want to make sure we are discussing as a board, cover the very important topics, give the proper direction to superintendent, and then have a cadence of which we're coming back. So I welcome conversation about that and feedback.
Ms. Barker?
Thank you. In terms of the AI policy, I totally agree. I think we do need a more robust policy that encompasses what we're actually looking at as a school district, and I would be very happy to have that conversation. So thank you for bringing that to the table. Going back to your answer to my question about the intentionality of adding a prayer or invocation, what I'm wondering, would it make more sense to talk about like a civility policy? Does that make more sense than doing an invocation or a prayer? If what your intent is that we would all, treat each other civilly, then perhaps that would be another option. With regard to the resolution for celebrating the semi-quincentennial, I love the idea of celebrating the semi-quincentennial. Is that how you say it? Semi-quincentennial. But I want to ask Mr. Connor, do we need a resolution to celebrate the semi-quincentennial?
Not officially, we do not. We could designate a week, just like we have certain weeks throughout the year related to a lot of different celebrations that occur. So it's not necessary to have a resolution in order to celebrate the I messed it up, semi-quincentennial.
Okay, so while I am very much on board celebrating in general, and I've said this from the dais multiple times, I am not a fan of resolutions. I see them generally not work in anybody's favor. They're typically performative and do more for political theater than actually making anyone's lives better. So, that would be my first concern. If, however, we are if the will of the board is that we would have a resolution on this matter, I have proposed some possible edits to be considered, and those are in your packet here, because I think the initial resolution is pretty narrow in its scope of defining patriotism and what the founding fathers intended and all that. And so I would add some things that make it specific to Sarasota, that take into account the diversity of our district and our students and our families, and the importance of public education and all of that. So that was my thoughts on the resolution, and I hope that y'all will take that under consideration if we do end up having to vote on a resolution, but it would be my preference that we would not have a resolution at all.
Ms. Rose?
Thank you, Ms. Marinelli. I look to many years of having quality input from the public, from parents here in Sarasota County, and it's been answered by our State Board of Education and the new standards, but there's been a huge and significant focus on civics, and that there wasn't enough of it, and that today there is with the new standards and those weaving through the grade levels. I think that the pieces in Mrs. Ziegler's resolution are on the money for answering not only what already exists in the curriculum of teachers. So I would make a point that this isn't, from my perspective, doesn't put more work on staff. Those standards are already there. I think the piece with making it a resolution, from my perspective, once again, is to take great pride in those civics and take great pride that we are a public school in the state of Florida, United States of America, with a free public education. And again, the merit to this community and gosh, we're going back at least 10 years of the cry out for us as a school system and for the state to accentuate those standards. So again, those standards exist, and I, as a board member, take great pride in emphasizing that we as a board not only celebrate that those standards in our school system, our teachers are already doing them, but they come together and celebrate this great country that we live in. So I do support recognizing this as a board. Thank you.
Any further comment?
If I may.
Ms. Ziegler?
And I'll read through this. I appreciate it. I ultimately have gone back and forth over resolutions over my years. And so I take your statement fairly. I don't deny that. I also think, I will say this to all of us, and even though I may differ on whatever you may bring forward, so I recognize that, but I take this position seriously. And so if there is something to bring forward that you believe reflects, any of us reflect something that you want to bring forward as a board member for the district as a resolution, I encourage that, because you're here. and for my sake, in this case, I think it could be a proclamation. Actually, I remember going back and forth and reading the difference, but I think very much, Mrs. Rose, you summed it up nicely, is this is a unique moment and something that I think over the course of time and has only been re-emphasized of the need to really focus on civics, to really re-energize the good, the triumphs, the things that overcome, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it when it comes to America and in order to form a more perfect union. And so to use this as a launching pad, as it's stated in the resolution, to recommit ourselves as a district, as the district leaders, as the board, to direct that superintendent and all of those who fall within the district leadership and staff and families and parents of who we impact, that we take that as a critical core point of this district. That's why I think the resolution makes sense. But as we would, from a process standpoint, bring it forward as it was really introduced. If Mr. Edwards, if Mr. Connor speaks with us, et cetera, one-on-one, and then is able to formulate, you have that fun job of bringing something back to us that really emphasizes, because at this glance, it doesn't look dramatically different by any means, I don't know, and is able to bring it back and something that we can bring forward as a board. I do think that's why I'm bringing it forward in the form of resolution.
Well, thank you. I didn't see.
I just thought you were going down the line.
Oh. Sorry, Mr. Edwards, go ahead. Thank you.
I'll be brief. The only real conversation from the member comments that I see of merit is the AI conversation. I think with the last time we did have a policy, I mentioned we should be talking about it on a quarterly basis. So I think that's has something to do with student outcomes and academic achievement and policy. I think that's warranted. In terms of the resolution and the invocation, I got to tell you, anytime that those resolutions have been presented at this board and the will of this board, it never plays out well. So I'm distrusting of anything that looks like a resolution. And I don't recall ever having had any conversation since I've been here about an invocation on the dais or in a workshop. So it coming up, and just for purposes, the will of the board is going to be the will of the board. But in my civics, I grew up with the separation of church and state. It hasn't been a conversation that anyone's been coming in. I haven't read an email. I talk to the public all the time. It's not something that comes up. And when I look at my civics lessons, the whole point of why there is a separation of church and state was that when our country was founded, there was about 50 or 60 different kinds of religions that were immigrating into our country and our shores at that time, and the government made the wise decision, in my opinion, to keep it separated. So I'm going to not support any of that, and the will of the board will be the will of the board.
Any further from any board member? Okay, thank you all. I definitely agree on the AI, because we hear it in news all the time, all the wonderful things that it can do and all the maybe not so wonderful things that it's going to be able to do. So I support that absolutely. On the resolution, I really don't like resolutions, but I do think the importance of celebrating America's birthday and having our students understand the reason that all of us can say what we want to say and have certain actions that we can all do is because of this country and our Constitution. So I think anything that we can do, as long as it fits into the state standards of civics and all the way across the board, that we celebrate it. And because I think it's such an honor for all of us to live in this country, and it's very fragile. And I think students really need to understand how this country really came about. So whether it's a resolution or a proclamation or I will support that, and I trust you, Superintendent Connor, look at that and your staff to see how that can be. We might have a week of where it's really coming to the attention, but I think it's going to be really important to start now to really have those conversations, because July 4th, 2026 is going to be here before we know it. Because I just remember at Southside, the wonderful, when we're talking elementary, but all the wonderful productions that the students participated in, and they're all adults and their children, some of them go to Southside and they still remember those activities. So I think whatever can be put together and we as a board then can discuss it, and if it's a resolution, I'm okay with that too. So with that, I had.
Want to get clarity. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm just moving right along.
I'm good on the. I'm good with the invocation. Got my marching orders there.
Yep.
The resolution, though, I want to be clear that it's not the expectation of the superintendent to develop resolution. Whatever comes of it, we will implement, but the board will be responsible. So. Yes. How we do that, I guess, probably do it our next workshop, maybe
and
have
talk in our one-to-ones and.
Yeah, and then develop it that way.
Yeah.
And then, of course, sounds unanimous. And the good thing is we've been working with IT and different departments around updates to our current policy. We had our first version with that. And then what has been added since then in terms of a draft form, we can definitely discuss. And then, of course, with some of the guidance laid out by Ms. Ziegler's document, we can also take a look at making sure that we're hitting on those points, because I do think, like with privacy and some of the things you shared, we want to make sure that all of those make for a robust policy. And so we'll be sure to do that.
And if I may, I would encourage my fellow colleagues, because they're kind of pillars here, to chime in your conversations on areas that may not be thought of, because I think the frame piece, this discussion is to be that guiding force that will create not just one policy, but potentially a number of policies. And so that was the intent of kind of that framework.
All right.
Okay, I have, first I want to welcome Ms. Rose back to the school board. And it's nice to have your expertise, because when we were talking about looking at our schools and repurposing and that, your knowledge, you're the only one up here as a board member that has that kind of knowledge. So I think it's going to be critical. So welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's humbling, and I am honored to have been appointed by Governor DeSantis, and extraordinarily continue to be committed to academic achievement and supporting the great superintendent that we have, Superintendent Connor, and the resource that you need to keep the acceleration going, particularly in reading, and the resources that our teachers, staff need to continue the hard work at their hands. So thank you, Ms. Marinelli. That was very nice.
And the last thing that I would to bring up with my fellow board members, I'm out in the community a lot too, and many families, specifically moms, have asked if we could look at having a different time for our board meetings, because when their children are in school, they are available to come to a board meeting, but when they're at 6 o'clock at night or even 3 in the afternoon, when we used to have those, they can't come because they are at home, homework, activities, dinner. So one parent asked 10 o'clock in the morning. So I said, that's not a decision that I can make. I will have to bring that up to our my fellow board members to see if we can move that for board action and discussion. And that is all I have. Ms. Rose?
Thank you, Ms. Marinelli. I hear you, and I think that, my priority is the business of the board, and the conversations that traditionally have occurred in workshops have been of incredible quality, informative not only to individual board members, but to our community at large, and I think are deeply rooted in our progress as a district. I would like to support you in the information that is coming in, and look at what those options might look like.
Mrs. Ziegler?
So yes, I would concur with the business of the board, and then also look at staff as far as what works, what's an impediment. The county government runs on a normal business time frame. Members of the public come. I know we do actually hear from members of the public all the time at nighttime saying they would rather not be here. They'd rather be doing dinner. They'd rather be doing softball. Well, I say softball because I'm a softball mom, or whatever other thing that we have to, that many of the families have to drive their children to, or if it's during the day, 3 o'clock is not ideal. I know that for sure. So that is certainly something we hear regularly in these chambers. I'm not opposed to it at all. I don't know if it's 10 o'clock or what. Again, I think of if we're moving it to the daytime, I'd rather start earlier, but that's just me, so we can get it done. But I look at the county government. They have multiple meetings or multiple times. They start, I want to say 9. They'll have public comment at various times at different hearings, et cetera. They run a little bit different as far as the business, but they certainly are still capable of having public comment, because I think it's very important. That's certainly the goal. So just using that as an example, and I do know some other districts that do a early start time and still have sufficient public comment as well. I also want to see, we've had those town halls. I know the last one was very well attended, and thank you to the team wherever Jamal is. Thank you. He does an incredible job. And then Mr. Parento, thank you. And Mr. McNichol, I know you did a lot behind the scenes too. So, but those afford a great opportunity as well. It's hard to really wrap a net and get everyone. And so having various mediums and ways in which we can ensure to have community feedback is important, but certainly the business of the board is of paramount importance as well. So if I look forward to that conversation and support evaluating different times.
Mr. Edwards?
I think there are just two sides to that conversation where people are going to say, I have a job and I'm a working mom and I can't be here. And the 6 o'clock is theoretically to address that particular issue. I haven't heard a whole lot about other scenarios. So instead of having that kind of debate, I think it would behoove us, much like we did with redistricting, to really make sure that an information blast goes out by school to the parents and tell them to get on the website where we could have an actual survey and get the actual information from people that are interested in attending school board meetings and find out what the majority rule would be for attendance from the community. But we have to do, it can't just be throw it up on the website and hope that we're going to get people to answer. It really has to go out school-based to the parents in a big way, the same way that we do from redistricting conversations. That's my suggestion.
Thank you. If there's nothing else from the board? I have something. Yes, you do, Ms. Rose.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea, Mr. Edwards. I would like to take it a step further and look to how we might get feedback specifically from parents, because that's the business that we're in, is parents and families. I of the mind that we have folks coming from different counties, and coming, representing organizations that may or may not be, which is common knowledge, parents or families in our school district. So I'm all for that feedback and how it aligns to the business of the board and the pieces that we go forward with, but I would like some kind of quality that it's actually coming from parents. Thank you.
Mrs. Barker?
As a parent, I know that it is incredibly difficult to find a time that everyone wants to meet. When I was trying to schedule PTO meetings, I mean, you cannot win. It is not possible to win. But I'm interested in this idea of a daytime meeting, as someone who would have benefited from that, certainly. So I'm fully support looking into that. I would just note that that could also make it harder for teachers to attend, because they're working during those times. Also for our student representative or the student performances, I guess we'd have to get buses, like a field trip kind of thing. So I think there's some moving parts there. But I wonder if it might make sense to even rotate having an evening meeting and then a morning. I've done that before, one meeting would be a morning meeting, one meeting would be a evening meeting. So that's all I have to say about that. Best of luck to you in trying to figure that out, because I don't have a good answer for you.
Well, it was a very lively
Yeah.
workshop today with many discussions, very positive, and I thank everybody for that. Mr. Connor, closing remarks?
Well, Ms. Barker was tongue-in-cheek, but it really is a little, I need a little direction from the board here, because I'm not quite clear. So I know Mr. Duggan and Mr. Parento, there are policies. I mean, if we change the time or date of a meeting, I think there's a policy that's set forth on how that even happens. So we would need to make sure that was the case. Is it the will of the board? Am I getting consensus that we're doing a survey first? Or I know two.
No, I
heard
think that's the survey part. I don't think has been ironed out, but I think at least 4 are interested possibly in looking at a different time.
Okay. And if that were the case, then the policy, and I believe it would be, you would have to vote as a board on the change at a regular meeting. So that would, I think, in order for that to happen, there would be an item for you to vote on in terms of the change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that would probably happen or is that something you want to occur at the next meeting, or what's the thought that we do a survey and do it in October, or? I just want to be clear. I want to meet the expectation of the board here, so.
May I?
Yes, you may.
And if we're having this discussion that a different time has potential and it needs to be voted on, I think that we need to have feedback, if that's in our one-on-ones, on what does the policy dictate that looks like? And, is it something that goes forward as a time change that is immediately now? Is it for next year? Is that something that can be ironed out in the one-on-ones? Does it go up for a workshop? Does it go into, I'm not sure those answers. Mrs. Barker had looking at 2 different times, rotating months. I think there's some things here that need to be ironed out, which is basically we have to follow our own policy. What does it say relative to this board having consensus to change the time?
Yeah.
That I think is a basic piece.
Right. So I think once we figure out what it is, then we'll vote on that at a regular meeting.
So what the policy says is that the schedule for the regular school board meetings is set for the succeeding calendar year at the organizational meeting, which is held in November. But a regular meeting date can be changed by school board action at a previous meeting, provided that each member is notified. So if there was going to be a time change, but not a date change, I think the same would fall in line with that at a regular school board meeting, the board could take action as a whole in determining whether or not to change the time of a future meeting.
All right.
And Mr. Duggan, that's
the policy, so yes, obviously you're free to do what you want, but if you want to change that, we have to go through the process.
right, because you and I had discussed that earlier, so what it just is going to be when it goes on, possibly at the reorg meeting in November, or we do it in our October, but I definitely think it needs to be discussed in the one-on-ones with Superintendent Connor. So. Okay. They're lit up. Mr. Edwards?
I don't want to be confused as someone that said we should examine it. I want to be clear that it's fine, in my opinion, the way it is, unless data substantiates a change. So I am not interested in changing the time unless I have data that suggests that. When I look at a 6 o'clock meeting, that is when everyone theoretically is after, if they work, they can be here. And teachers, all of the wheels in motion. So I am not interested in having a one-on-one conversation about it unless we are data-driven in that change. And once again, these are the kinds of topics that I find to be distracting from what we're really doing, which are the student outcomes.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards, and I would have to disagree about it being distracting, because if a parent comes to a board meeting, that means that they are concerned about their child and what goes on in this district. Ms. Rose?
If I understood the policy, the procedures that we need to follow, am I hearing correctly that there is potential, if this board had consensus, to try out a daytime meeting prior to the calendar change?
Yes, the board could take action at, say, the September meeting or the October meeting to change a time of a future meeting prior to the setting of the 2026 calendar of school board meetings at the November reorg meeting.
I would like to see if there is interest in the board in trying it in real life, to see how it works, if there is an interest there.
Ms. Ziegler?
Yeah, so because it's not a date, and I think the way I understood it, as was reiterated, at the next meeting, it can be proposed that the following meeting's at a different time, same date. I'm okay with that, again, hinging off, I know we hear it almost every time we have public comment about not wanting to be there at a certain time, how hard it is to get. I know we get emails. And again, to Mrs. Barker's point, and we're reiterating, we're never gonna get everyone happy. This is something different, and I think it is absolutely the business of the board to determine when we should be meeting. Can't think of anything more specific. So I'm in favor with that. If you wanna try it, I think it actually makes more sense to try it out. We've had 3 o'clock, we've had 6 o'clock. We have not done a daytime since my time here, outside of workshops. And it may not be a bad idea to try it now, and then at the reorg, you can establish a more specific, concise schedule, providing us that time, that feedback as well.
Thank you, Ms. Ziegler. And I think it's very important to point out, it is the business of the board. We are a board, we are a government board, and we have business that we have to do. And yes, we definitely want input, but we do have, this is a business. It's the business of the board. So I'm okay with what you have said. I would like to move forward with that.
So may I? I'm
Yes, you may.
just looking for clarification. Does it require a vote at the next board meeting? So this upcoming September 16th board meeting?
Yeah, my interpretation of what's been shared around the policy.
I just needed clarification. That part is
Yeah, I
gray
think
for
the
me.
way I interpret it is it would be proposed at the next regular meeting, which would be Tuesday, the 16th. That would be voted upon, and then we would institute it, I guess, at the next regular board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience, Ms. Marinelli. I just really wanting to make sure I understand what's.
I appreciate everything and everybody's input. This is my first shot at being the chair, and and I just appreciate any help to make sure it runs smoothly. And and then November 1, we'll be voting on a new chair and vice chair for that too. So we have a lot to do in the next in September's board meeting and October, and then November, we have the reorg. So if there's no further comments, I don't see anything. We will adjourn this meeting until 6 o'clock tonight, when we have a special meeting for the Welland Park redistricting. So this meeting is adjourned.
Wow.
Yay!
Good job.